Good evening. Good evening. We're going to get started. It's 7 o'clock, so.
So you announce new business, 84 Charles.
Yep. Good evening. I'm Kevin Smith. I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. A quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. This commission operates pursuant to the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of the State of Maryland. Local authority of the commission is derived from the Municipal Code of the City of Annapolis, Chapter 21, Section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve and promote the preservation and appreciation of historic sites, structures, and districts. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in Chapter 21, Section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland 1977 Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside of the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. So we'll start with roll call. Brendan Greeley. Kim Golder. Leslie Xavier. Will Scott. Here. Bill Williams.
Here.
And Kim Finch. Here. And I'm Kevin Smith. So we have a quorum tonight. And we also have John Tower, Chief of Historic Preservation, Kim Consoli, our recorder, and many other members of our city here tonight. So tonight's meeting is a joint meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission. We will be taking care of the items that are specific to the Preservation Commission first, and then we'll be moving to do the City Dock presentation last. So I'm hoping it won't take us very long to get through our regular items today. So we're excited to have everybody here for the interest of the City Dock Resiliency Project. So moving along with our agenda, John, do you have announcements?
One announcement. It's been made clear that our extension for our grant for rewriting the guidelines extends until November. So we will, I think, be reprioritizing that to a faster track.
Thank you, John. Any violations? New violations or status of active violations you'd like to report on?
Nothing new and nothing significant enough to mention tonight at this important meeting.
Thank you, John. So item E on our agenda is a Planning Commission item, so we'll do that when the Planning Commission joins us up here. Item F is new business, 84 Charles Street. We do have an item called the consent docket, and the consent docket is a procedure designed to expedite routine items before the commission. In order to be considered for the consent docket, the application must have received the recommendation of approval or approval with minor modifications from all of the commission's technical advisors, as well as the commissioners, who are pulled directly prior to this meeting. However, no application may be approved without the opportunity for public comment. The following applications are possibly eligible for consideration on the consent docket, and that's 84 Charles Street.
May I move to put 84, make a motion to put 84 Charles Street, thank you, onto the consent document?
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye, so it's unanimous. Okay, so I would like to ask, does any member of the public wish to speak against the application for 84 Charles Street? I don't see any. So do we have representatives for the application at 84 Charles Street? Would you guys just stand up? Well, I do need to administer the oath to all who will be testifying tonight. So if you're putting a note on the note card, you don't need to do this. But if you're representing either of any of the applications tonight, I would like to administer the oath. And we can do this in mass, and this includes all applicants, staff, consultants, and professionals, and any member of the general public seeking to enter into the record their comments regarding any of the applications, which will be heard at this hearing. If you intend to testify, please rise, raise your right hand. Do you affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimonies given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief? Please respond by stating, I do. Thank you. So for the applicants from 84 Charles Street, I saw you had a written acknowledgement of the conditions on the application. Just verbally reaffirm that acknowledgement of you agree to those conditions? Great. So I'll take a motion to for the 84 Charles Street.
Motion to.
Well, we need to approve it with the conditions.
I make a motion on 84 Charles Street to approve it with conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye. So that one's approved. Thank you. That's okay. All right, let's get my agenda back up here. All right, so our next item is the pre-application for the Maryland Walk of Fame. Is the representative here for that pre-application? Would you come to the table and introduce yourselves and introduce your project? And if you need the light on the microphone, so if you push the button there, then the microphone will be on, they can hear you. Just in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Ruby Singleton Blakely. I live at 12, what is my address? 1230 Gemini Drive in Annapolis.
I'm Judy Budensick. I live at 211 Severn Avenue in the Great Maritime Republic of Eastport. I own Francis Marketing Group, and I serve as the Communications Director of the Great Maryland Walk of Fame Initiative. Founded in 1649, this magical state capital is the oldest city in the state of Maryland and the 35th oldest city in America. As you know, millions of people visit our incredible city annually from the U.S. and around the world. Maryland has been home and the adopted home to a wide range of people in history, from our founding fathers to contemporary recording artists, from sports figures to songwriters, from actors to educators and public servants to authors. I'm honored to have been selected to serve on the committee to develop the Maryland Walk of Fame. I'm a 25-year resident of the great state, moving here to serve as a general manager of legendary music station WRNR. For well over a decade, I was lucky enough to work with many of the musical artists that will actually be future recipients of a star. The Maryland Walk of Fame Founding Commission has created an iconic program similar to the world-famous Hollywood Walk of Fame. Our first star will be placed on Church Circle at the top of Main Street, outside historic Maryland Inn, home of the King of France Tavern, where so many world-renowned musicians have performed. This is just the first of many celebrated star ceremonies for years, decades, and generations to come. Can we switch to the star? But there's you can see on the map where we'll be. We know this will become a new attraction for locals and visitors alike, adding to the incredible history that exists here in Annapolis. I look forward to your approval and full support for this phenomenal initiative. What a joy it will be for all of us on the committee to work together with Governor Wes Moore, Mayor Gavin Buckley, and all of you to bring the Maryland Walk of Fame to life. If you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I knew you would love it. That's good.
All right. John, do you have any comments for us?
I've been privileged to work with the applicant through many meetings. I don't know exactly what the final size will be, but I think it should be based on other manhole covers which are within the historic district in terms of visual impact. You may not know it's there unless you're looking for it. So I don't think that it's going to have strong impact on visual clutter. But it's a new feature, new idea. I hadn't considered it until it was proposed.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's certainly the visual impact is limited if it's in the sidewalk. So what materials do you have a plan to produce these out of?
It's bronze.
Bronze? Okay. And then would it be like in the application, there was kind of a black and then a bronze, and then this picture was just all bronze? Is that kind of how you're envisioning it?
Those were the initial examples.
Sure.
And the committee voted, and this was the one that we decided on.
Okay, so it would be all this color, and then it would be the relief of the material that's kind of creating the imagery that you're looking for.
Right.
Okay. Will?
Can it play Ms. Braxton's music?
I'm sorry?
Well, if you approve that,
Yeah, we could make that work. That's been asked from a couple of people. I think we might be able to get her to hum a few
Consult with
tunes.
staff first.
Brendan? Yeah.
And I'd like to say I'm the executive director of the project. And of course, I've lived in Annapolis for I go by my daughter's age, so it'd be 50 years in February. And I understand and appreciate the historic value of the city of Annapolis. That's one reason that we moved here. So nothing that we do will be to defray or take away from that. This is home for me.
Wonderful. Us too. Brendan?
So it looks like an exciting project. I'm glad you guys have brought it here. I guess my question is, what is the sort of administrative nonprofit structure that's going to keep it going sort of over the long term? Because you put Tony Braxton up, and then you put Tori Amos up, and then somebody's got to decide what the next one is, and then that's got to continue. I guess I'm sort of wondering about the administrative permanence of it.
Right, we'll work under the same principle as the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We'll have a selection committee, and the next recipients, we'd like to have more than one, maybe two or three. And there are so many artists that from Maryland that are not recognized. So we want to applaud those, not necessarily all artists, but anyone that has actually been, how would you call it, to lend to the state of Maryland in a productive way. In fact, Oprah would be one of them that would be a star, not necessarily born here, but this is where she got her career started. And there are lots of them like that.
Will?
That does make me wonder, do you have an idea, are you placing them or planning to place them all in Annapolis or in other places around the state? Because all of a sudden, when you start to mention how many important people there are, we could have a lot of those that deserve it, but are you planning to put them all within the Annapolis Historic District?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
well,
but we,
right,
but we,
2 generations from now, they might expand out. But
yeah,
I
we
think
may need to
can
go to
still kind of
around Maryland.
put it up there.
Yeah, and I was really amazed in doing my research to see how many celebrity types that we have from Maryland, how many have contributed to the economic development of the state of Maryland. So it's really important. And as you may have known, I worked in economic development for the city of Annapolis, director of small and minority business. Yeah. And I did a great job, I think.
Yes, I remember.
But we did
it
have,
well.
we had lists under each of the categories because we specifically chose those categories. And then on each one, we compiled the list. So there's, I'm not joking when I say there's generations worth of people just on the list that we created from our small group. And I'm sure there's more that didn't even occur to us.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking that looks lovely and very appropriate and a great idea. But, you know, if there were 150 of them around the historic district, that might be a different matter.
Well, I mean, I'm an art consultant also, so, and I've done interior design and I'm into design. It's gotta look great. It's gotta be presented well. Otherwise, it will
that is-
deter.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Kim?
Yes. So in your initial installation, how many are you envisioning or planning for that initial installation? Will it be the one? Will it be 5, 10,
Yeah,
20?
this will be the first one. And next year, we hope to have at least 3 so that we can balance out, because this will be right, you know, where Duke of Gloucester and Main Street come together. It'll be right there as you cross to go on the other side of Church Circle. So we want to make it balanced.
Okay. Thank you.
And Bill?
And we'll be responsible for the maintenance of it also, and monitoring.
That's one of my
That's
questions.
your, I see, I read your
She's a
mind.
mind reader.
I
We have
didn't
a
tell you all
connection
that.
Because right now you show it as a bright bronze, and if you just let it age, it's going to get that patina.
Yes.
And what is the plan to maintain it if you want it to stay bright?
I don't know that we necessarily need it to stay bright. I kind of like the patina look.
like the
but
patina.
Also, we have to make sure that we keep watch on it to make sure it's not it's not vandalized. If the city has to do any work, maintenance there, that the brick is damaged, we will keep an eye on that to make sure that we repair that as well.
Okay, so you don't see it as something that's an ongoing maintenance for the appearance. It's just going to patina out. So it becomes, at that point, it'll be more of a background item.
Well, we want to make sure that it's very sightly and it's appealing to our tourists
No, I
that come
understand.
into.
But when it's first, the new one is going to look like that. That's what I'm trying
Yes.
to get to.
Yes.
And in 4 or 5 years, it's going to more be like penny color.
Right. It'll be the
brownish.
chapel dome.
Well, that's copper, but okay.
Same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Kim, did you have any questions? So my only other question was kind of what do you, especially with these initial ones, like what is kind of your like ideal distance between the individual markers? Because when I read the application at first, I was kind of thinking it would be like a loop around the church circle, but I didn't. But it sounds like there's many people in Maryland that are worthy of recognition. So kind of what's your vision of how far, how spaced to, what's the appropriate spacing?
We looked at going around Church Circle and then possibly around the church itself, the streets there, and then out St. John's, towards St. John's. And that way, just because they're slightly less traveled as well as being downtown where there's just kind of a lot going on, that it's an area that someone actually takes a walk and a stroll, that type of thing. So for at least the next 20 years, it would go there, and it could go into other cities, but we can also expand other avenues out.
And then between each individual marker, are you thinking like 5 feet apart or 20 feet apart or 30 feet?
You have a number.
Yeah, we haven't, but of course, we'll make sure that we share that.
Sure.
We're not quite there yet.
Okay.
Right,
right.
when there's nothing etched in stone on that. If you have a recommendation, we're absolutely open to.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, if I can.
Go ahead, Bill.
One more question. When you start heading towards St. John's, multiple of those sidewalks out there are actually state maintained. Have you been talking with them?
Well, initially, we thought about putting it on the sidewalk next to Thurgood Marshall's statue, but in getting that approved, it's going to take a lot of work. We have to go through the state and so forth, so we're just not there yet. And that would be actually about maybe 10 years from now if we do decide that we want to go in that direction.
Okay.
You know, if you think of 2 or 3 going on either side, going up towards, what is it, School Street, is that School Street or College Street? Going
Going out College Ave.
College Avenue, and then going to the left, going around State Circle, going towards the courthouse. So to balance it out, 2 on each side, and then we decide where we're going to go from there. But of course, we'll be checking in with you all to see.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Brendan?
I'm just curious about the context around them? Will there be printed materials available sort of explaining each person's connection to Maryland? Because they have these on the sides of buildings in some cities, and it'll say Winston Churchill, born here in Brooklyn, 1880. And so is there going to be any more context on the plaques themselves, or is there going to be literature? I'm just wondering how to...
Yeah, so, no, right now, we're looking just at having the name, and I think most of the names that you'll see, everyone will be familiar with them. So I don't think that it's necessary, maybe for people coming in to town to visit, but we'll have some sort of literature also.
But we've also talked about either an app or a QR code, that this way we could just keep updating a website that has it and doing that, and someone can just scan and then you go, or it says just download the app type thing.
And also the idea of having it be the size of a manhole. The streets, as you know, we don't have a lot of sidewalk, so it doesn't take up a lot of sidewalk space, the size that we're looking at.
Yeah, just my last comment then would be just working with the preservation office when you work with these. Just we're selecting the sites wisely so that the actual brick is modern brick and not historic brick that we're replacing.
Right.
But I think that's something. It sounds like you guys are happy to comply with these
We are.
expectations. So, any other comments from commissioners? No, thank you. It's hopefully this is a project that can add some interest to our city and create more vitality in that way. So,
And tourists.
yes,
It's all about
John?
economic development.
Don't you want to say whether this is feasible because it is a public hearing application?
yeah. So based on the comments from the commissioners, that I would expect us to find the project feasible, subject to the conditions that we've discussed. So we're excited for this opportunity. But just a reminder on the pre-application, this is the commentary I'm supposed to add before you stand up here, but this is a generic statement about pre-application. The pre-application is an accommodation made to assist property owners and their representatives in developing their application. No comments or suggestions made here regarding this project should be considered approval or disapproval of the project itself. Do you understand and agree to these terms?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add one. We're trying, I'm glad that you appreciate what we're doing, because we'd like to have Gavin and the governor to do a press conference to announce very soon, so that, because we're looking at September.
Yeah, take that off the screen. We don't want anybody to know.
Oh, yeah, we don't. Nobody knows this, you guys. We're all quiet here. Mum's the word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right, for the agenda, that completes the sections that the Historic Preservation Commission had. So I'd invite the Planning Commission to join us, and then they have two items that they need to complete before we start the joint work session. And while they're walking up, I just want to remind those public that are viewing and here with us that a work session has a specific meaning. There are 3x5 cards available for written questions. No public testimony will be received about the City Dock Resiliency Project tonight. But I would like to remind that there is a City Dock Action Committee meeting that will be on on the 30th of this month, and that will be available, and the applicant will be reminding us of that as well. So I'd like to invite the Planning Commission to join us.
You're exiled.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a very truncated kind of a meeting tonight. I feel like I'm a salamander, or anyway, let me keep going here. The Planning Commission is going to have a very, very quick formal meeting. We only have to approve 2 sets of findings. Commissioners already have copies of them, and I think we'll be able to proceed pretty quickly. So I hereby bring to order this specially scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission. Ms. Consoli, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Waldman,
Present.
Mr. Klein,
Present.
Ms. Butler. Present. Mr. Riley,
Present.
Mr. Cummings is not expected. Mr. Svakinudis as
Also-
well is not expected. We have 4 members present.
So we have a quorum. The only matter of business on our agenda tonight are 2 sets of findings. Why don't we take a look first at the report of our report, our findings and recommendations pursuant to the report that the Maritime Economic Development staff brought to us over the course of 2 meetings. My recollection is that the first meeting was on March 7th. That's according to my digital calendar, but digital and analog don't always agree. Any change to that?
Nope, that's the correct date.
Thank you. And then they came back on April 4th with a very extensive and very well-presented report about their efforts to determine the percentages of maritime and non-maritime uses within the maritime zones. They reported on problems and successes that they've had in increasing the vigor and vitality of the maritime zones, and also the problems that they have in finding qualified people to do the work. Have you all had an opportunity to read the findings that were prepared by Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve those findings.
Motion to approve the findings?
And a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of approving those findings and sending them along to the city council, say aye, please.
Aye.
All right, I suppose we could give them
Just for
directly
the
to
record-
Mr. Buckley right in the audience
record,
and make him
Kimberly?
the messenger. What?
For the record, I'm abstaining because I
Yes.
was not at that meeting.
Was not at the meeting. All right, the second set of findings has to do with our review of the capital budget. Have you all had an opportunity to read the document?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, any comments, edits, amendments, subtractions? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Mr. Pline once again abstains.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
I will sign these and send these along, Ms. Consoli, and with that, a motion to adjourn this session of the Planning Commission. So moved.
Second.
Seconded?
Aye.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All right, now we can move forward.
Great.
All right, so we can move forward into what's been done a little bit before, which is a joint session of the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission. We're doing this in order to be more efficient, to be more economical, and to be able to help projects move forward with the opportunity of getting the input of the commissioners of both commission. This is a work session. This is not a formal session. There will be no votes to approve or disapprove anything tonight. This is informational. This is the first opportunity that the citizens of Annapolis have to see proposals made with respect to the city dock. And it's an opportunity for us to give feedback to them. Because it's a work session of the two commissions, this is not a public hearing, and so public statements, testimonies, debates, and so forth will not occur. However, because you're all intelligent and you're informed citizens, we encourage you to use index cards, note cards, which are up at the table near the door entrance there, to write questions down. And they pass those questions up to Mr. Jakubiak, who's probably the best-dressed man in the audience tonight. And he'll vet the questions and organize them and then send them up to Kevin and myself to read them so that your opportunity to ask questions will be countenanced. We would like to hear your intelligent questions so that the team who's designing this can have the opportunity to incorporate them and so forth. I would also like to remind you that there will be a larger public meeting on May the 30th, and where will that be, Ms. Fogarty?
It'll be on the city dock, under the tent, adjacent to the Burtis House, in that little lot between Wanderer's Restaurant and the Burtis House.
Okay, so there'll be a tent set up, May 30th, what time?
5 to 6:30.
5 to 6:30. Now, that's going to be an opportunity probably to see more and to engage with the members of the team. But this is a great opportunity tonight to see what's being presented. It's going to be presented in two parts. I understand. I'm not responsible for the presentation, but the first part will include the matters of the Maritime Welcome Center and the end of Prince George Street Park. And the second part, and we'll take a break. And we'll ask the questions relevant to that section, and then we'll take a break. And then the second section will deal with matters of the legacy, historical matters that will be incorporated into this park with the pergola and the fountain. So there will be will be the second part, and we'll entertain questions relevant to them, and that should be conclusive. So with that understanding, with those understandings, please make use of your ears and good sense and write the good questions down and send them up to us. Ms. Fogarty? I forgot anything to add?
Hello, nice to be on this side. I'm here as the mayor of the city of Annapolis to say a huge thank you for what you're about to undertake. This is a historic moment for the city. Today, you'll see something that the city has needed for a long, long time. This is one of the most famous maritime cities in America. We are famous for our waterfront, but we have substandard waterfront facilities. We have a harbour master's office in the middle of a parking lot that is nearly a half a century old. We have a city dock park that is basically concrete that floods on a regular basis. And today you'll see what we think is going to be one of the most visited buildings in the city. Even if you're not here to boat, you'll be able to go up onto a balcony and look out onto Spa Creek. You'll be able to go in and get access to hear the story of Captain Burtis in the Burtis House, the last remaining waterman's house on the waterfront in City Dock. Potentially, we'll see, you'll be able to get a rockfish sandwich, maybe, or some oysters or a roasted oyster on a small little outdoor counter. Maybe, maybe not. This is up to the committee here. But this building is something that the city needs. If you've ever tried to use the boater showers, the boater bathrooms, the boater laundry facilities, they are substandard. If you've ever tried to use the bathrooms there, they really need upgrading. You are going to be responsible for this historic transformation of City Dock, and I just want to say a huge thank you, because it's going to be on your watch that we are not only going to create something magical and something beautiful, but we're going to do something that's going to make us all proud And at the same time, we're going to protect the city from flooding and the historic district and the downtown businesses. And I would urge you to move this as fast as you can because we are on track to have the record flooding year in the history of this city. And who knows what will happen next year. We do not have time to wait. Thank you for your urgency. Thank you for all the dedication you're giving to your jobs. Thank you for being the volunteers that you are. I know none of you get paid for this. And this city thanks you, and I look forward to the presentation. Thank you all.
Well, thank you so much. Again, the mayor has really said it all. We are delighted that you put this together to have a joint work session. As the chair of the Planning Commission and the chair of HPC just said, there will be a meeting for the City Dock Action Committee and the community on the 30th of May. But this will be, for this tonight is the first official rollout, for want of a better term, of the revised Welcome Center, the Prince George Street Park. You'll also see the electrical equipment, the pergola, the stage, and the new fountain, and it's all pretty exciting. We have this evening on our team, some of the team members you have met, some are new this evening. Kim Dayleader from Traceries, which is a nationally recognized preservation firm, Bryce Turner, and Chris Holler, I apologize, from BCT Architects. While they are a national firm with projects all over the country, you will recognize Bethesda Row and National Harbor, as there's Scott Mahan Reichel, who has successful placemaking projects in every continent except Australia, and John Tower, who will also be part of our presentation this evening, who you know well, who's our Chief of Historic Preservation. So with that said, tonight, what you are going to see is a redesigned project, and I think the mayor has made the point very vehemently that this past year, we are thus far in May, we are on pace to have 120 flooding events in 2024. The prior record in 2019 was half that, 65 flooding events. So the urgency cannot be overstated. You have both the commission, Planning Commission, and HPC, you have been a part of much of the outreach effort over the past 5 years, but in particular, this past year alone, 2023, there were over 80 stakeholder and public meetings. In terms of meetings where the Maritime Welcome Center was discussed and shared, there were 65. And the basis of these meetings, where I think we've got such tremendous input, was ward-based. We went to all the wards in addition to the Planning Commission, HPC, Council, Historic Annapolis, business organizations, and we also worked, and I say we, our designers and architects worked closely with the City Dock Action Committee design team, which is several local architects. We met with them again a few weeks ago to make sure we had captured all of their comments as well as everyone else's comments. So what we heard from this really large cross-section of people, we heard one consistent theme: please create the best public space for use by the entire community so that everyone feels welcome. Reduce some of the volume of the Welcome Center, make sure the Welcome Center is reoriented and that it faces our bay, and make sure the public can have direct access to view this incredible harbor from the second deck. So with that, Bryce Turner is going to share the changes.
Thank you, Eileen. So just to follow up on that particular line of presentation, I just want to talk about a couple of these revisions that have been made from the previous design that most of you have seen. And then we'll go through in a lot of detail the actual building and kind of present it from the ground up, if you will. But as Elaine mentioned, the area of the building has been reduced by about 540 square feet above ground. We've actually reduced it further below ground as well. The building has been rotated 90 degrees to address Spa Creek. And one of the things I'll have to admit is that often in doing public projects such as this with a lot of community input, we often get better results, and I'll admit it, there's no question about it. We get a lot of good feedback. We have to work hard and keep moving and believing in the project in order to incorporate some of these comments. But one of the things that I just wanted to point out that came from rotating the building 90 degrees was that, as you can see in this image, we have the opportunity for the building to be more transparent. Even there's a lot of glass that we'd like to have here to take advantage of views, but also because of the glass on both ends of the building, you really see through the building significantly as well. So that was a result of rotating the building 90 degrees, which really helped. And then we also added or expanded the outdoor deck a bit, the crow's nest, which is for the harbor master, and made it public access space, which we think is really important. If ever there's one thing that I've heard in this room and many other rooms before, is that public access at the water's edge is really important aspect of this project. So now I'd like to really start with the context of where we are and how we really got here for this and why we think this building really meets the needs of the design problem. The Maritime Welcome Center is shown here on the left of the Burtis House, the smaller square building on the right, which is right at the foot of Prince George Street. The Maritime Welcome Center, as you see here, is two elongated rectangles, and the ridge of the roof in each of those two volumes is running parallel to the ridge of the roof of Burtis. And so we kind of came up with this volumetric opportunity here to create almost really three different kind of distinct architectural expressions, including Burtis. And you'll see that as we move forward in other portions of the design. So we're constructing 4,571 square feet of building above grade to replace the 3,100 square foot existing Harbor Master building. And this volumetric concept, as I mentioned, allows the new construction really to be sympathetic to the Burtis House and adjacent to it in a way that has a lot of historic precedent. The connection to and accessibility for Burtis really helps us to activate Burtis and find uses for it. So you'll see that we found a great use for the upper level of Burtis and starting to envision uses for the lower level of Burtis as well. And all of this really happens kind of at the rear of Burtis as it faces Prince George Street, but is adjacent to the water and really creates very much a 360-degree collection of buildings there that I'd like to share with you, how some of that happens and how we got here. John, you want to talk about the Sanborn map?
Yeah, so this is a 1921 Sanborn map, and I suggested that we include this in the presentation so that we would have a historic precedent for the viewscapes of the city dock, and also to look at how densely developed the city dock was. Now, that doesn't show everything that was actually on the city dock, but you can see from Craig Street east to the base of city dock, there are houses that are no longer there, right next to the Carroll Alley, and there are other industrial maritime businesses, including a large dock, which is right next to the Burtis House. And the Burtis House, if you look at it, which is right at the end of Prince George Street, was next to the ferry. So it was at the ferry landing. The house itself was a residence, and everything in the rear of Berta's house was for business, and the business was for boat rentals. They also sold oysters. I think Captain Burtis would have sold just about anything. He was quite the businessman. So I measured those outbuildings there and the hyphen, and the square footage for those is 1,590 feet, which is very close to the planned addition. So I thought that was interesting. Some of those are two-story, but here you also get, this is a high-resolution photo shot from the State House, and it's about 1910, and that is what City Dock looked like, and I think it's pretty amazing. You had so many different businesses. In the foreground, you can see a pile of oysters, and then a bunch of different buildings for businesses, and then further down on the left, you can see the more diminutive residences, and then about a third of the way in from the left, with the two chimneys, is the Burtis house. And that is what we're going to be working on to elevate that and to preserve it in stage one, phase one. And so here is what the Burtis house looked like. This is about 1910. It's not in the picture, but the Naval Academy's chapel has been built. And you can see a two-story outbuilding on Burtis, which I think is somewhat similar to what's being proposed, although there are sections. This is a single. You can also see there isn't a porch on the front of Burtis, but that is what we are interested in restoring there. And it's important to note that the front of the Burtis house was its public face, but the rear of the Burtis house was where the business was done. And so what is being proposed is an addition to the rear of the building, which always had additional buildings and uses.
So to fully, understand further the context of the City Dock, we put together this series of view studies to think about and look at how the view will change from Market House doors, for instance, here in this image, which is existing, which shows the view that's limited by the existing Harbor Master House and the Birdhouse there in the middle of that cone of vision. And then with the Harbor Master building gone and the new Maritime Welcome Center next to Burtis, it does expand the view to some extent. I think, which is worthwhile to understand. And then from the foot of Main Street, it's actually a very tight kind of cone of vision here because of 110 Compromise Street, the Chop Tank building, and with the existing Harbor Master building there. And when we build next to Burtis, you can see that it's true. We do tighten that view a bit further, but it's one that's not a very large perspective anyway because of all the things that are happening there. From the top of Main Street, this is a view I really like, where you can see the Eastern Shore, the bay, and even beyond Spot Creek, ships in the bay. And we've added a few trees here at the bottom just to give a sense of what it would look like with some of the additional trees and landscaping that we're proposing at City Dock for shading. The character of Annapolis is one that everyone in this room understands, I think, and we love the rich diversity and the fabric of the streetscape, which is truly wonderful. And because of the difference in the diversity of heights and roof shapes and materials and color, it really makes a difference. And I think that's what we love about Annapolis. And so we try to think of all that in the context of our design. The Burtis house here shown with the porch that was added in the front of the building, as John mentioned, and there's an addition on the left side of the upper middle photograph which is one story, and then there's actually this two-story addition in the rear that you can see behind on the bottom right photo. And those two additions will be removed in order to allow Burtis to be really in its original context, and also so that we can do some additional construction adjacent to it. In terms of thinking about materials and forms, we're very conscious that we want this building to be of the 21st century. We do not want it to harken back to details of the 18th century or 19th century. And, that's important. And yet we want shapes and forms to feel natural and reminiscent and, important views. So in other words, shed roofs, natural materials. We think wood is the right material for this location because of the history of wood construction at City Dock in general and how it's complemented brick construction throughout the city. We think that some large areas of glass are very possible and really important to take advantage of the views that we have. And so cedar and vertical siding we think is very appropriate here. These are some volumetric studies that we've done, which may or may not be of interest to all of you. But the reason we do this is we kind of start thinking about how do we add 2 extra volumes next to Burtis, and how do we do it in a way that's very sympathetic and appropriate. And so where we're showing the orange, especially in the top left image, that is where we feel we can create kind of 2 hyphen spaces that allow us to create 3 volumes, as I mentioned before, with Burtis. And so then we begin pushing and pulling those 2 volumes to create a space, like you see on the bottom left image, where the deck is allowed then to fill the area between these 2 volumes, and the bottom right being kind of a quick view of what the new Maritime Welcome Center will look like. And so this is a view from Spa Creek. The building's a little bit small here, but we'll zoom in and be able to see it better in a few more images. But I think it's important to understand, how these volumes work adjacent to Burtis, and obviously have, from a massing perspective, feel similar to some of those historic photographs. You still can see the side of Burtis nicely, as well as the front of the building on Prince George Street. These are floor plans that show the various uses that we're trying to incorporate here at the Maritime Welcome Center and how it relates to Burtis. We have to provide 2 additional staircases that provide life safety for all 3 of these volumes, if you will, and for the entire group of buildings. That plus an elevator for accessibility. So at the top left corner, we have Visit Annapolis, and that would be the visitor center, if you will, where people will enter, where we'll have signage for the building that you'll be directed to the various uses that you're looking for, whether it would be for some type of educational use that will happen in the ground floor of Burtis, which we're not exactly sure what that's going to be yet, but it certainly is available for a lot of different uses. There's no shortage of ideas from Chesapeake Bay environmental education to cultural legacy education and other display type educational opportunities. The connection to Burtis is really made through this connecting hyphen space, where we can enter along the stair into Burtis because there's a slight change of grade between these 2 structures on the ground floor. There's also an opportunity for some toilets here, in which we're looking at how they can be accessed from the exterior as well as the interior. There's a boater lounge space, which will really be the kind of welcoming space for boaters and or anyone who's coming to the harbor master function. They'll go up the elevator to get to that space. And then we've got a Waterman's Co-op space here, which is outdoor space that we're trying to create some interesting interaction with the interior space as well, but there could be food, as the mayor mentioned, a fish sandwich and a beer possibly here, or I can imagine possibly some watermen bringing oysters or crabs here. And, it's a great opportunity to think about the food aspects of City Dock. It could be a very important space for socializing and access as well up to the second level deck that is open to the public, as I mentioned before, this crow's nest space. This upper level is completely harbor master function, really. They'll control this space, but there are opportunities here for conference suites that could have a variety of flexible uses that I think would be really important for meeting space for the city, as well as for dignitaries, boat show, a lot of different types of uses, even private functions possibly where the space could be rented. This upper level of Burtis House itself will be the primary harbor master function space. It's 923 square feet, which is approximately what they feel they need. But in addition to that, we really get the harbor master lobby here where folks have come up the elevator or the stair and they can have access into that area if they need to, although the harbor master likes to control that access and deal with people here at a front desk for the most of the things that they need to meet with. So this is the upper level. You see the crow's nest space. The space in between the two buildings is a great opportunity for educational space, watercraft, access to the water, which is what we've, again, have heard so loud and clear, that whether it's kayaks or, as one of the councilman members put it yesterday, that an opportunity for pedal boats and some other types of things that will all have to be weighed with safety, of course, on the water as we have a busy harbor. However, but we think that's a great location for outdoor educational space. And then there's a basement level here, which is also decreased in size, but this will be a dry-proofed basement that will have public toilet facilities, which is incredibly important for any public space of this size at the City Dock Park. And then the boater facilities for those who are paying for boat slips will come down to this level to have showers and toilets, washer and dryer. And then there's some space here, we think, for storage. The final configuration of this could easily change, but these are the components that we think we need. So in terms of the design of the building, architects like to think about elevation drawings because it allows us to look at true proportions in terms of building heights and proximity. We are in the zone 2 of the historic district here, where we are working to 22 and 32 feet above the adjacent grade for our structure, and that includes to the cornice line and to the ridge of the building. We will fit within that height restriction. The Burtis House, and so that the cornice of the building will be, as you can see, close to the height of the cornice of Burtis, but the ridge of these new structures, because they're much deeper pitch, will actually be taller. You can see the two hyphen pieces here. The one on the left is very glassy. It's even proposed with a glass roof at the moment so that we can get as much transparency there as possible, but it will make the connection between the Maritime Welcome Center and Burtis at an existing window space. And the entrance to the entire Maritime Welcome Center will be within that right-hand volume. On the other side of the building from the water, you get kind of the mirror image of this. We think the nautical flags are going to be important here. Some feedback that we got from the community, as well as outdoor chairs in order to be able to see what's going on in the harbor, Wednesday night races, etc. The building will be, and I'll share with you the materials in a moment, but this is a section drawing of the building that shows the basement, the 2 levels above grade, how it ties into Burtis, and there is some balcony that looks out over City Dock Park. And we have that these hyphen spaces are important to us because we can locate mechanical equipment on that flat roof so it does not appear to be seen from the street and does not have to be put onto a sloped roof. These are the materials that we're using, from vertical wood siding that may be both light and dark, as well as cedar siding that would be for the roof and the siding material. There'll be metal mullions and glass for most of the open glass spaces, as well as cable tension railing system and some concrete tile in some locations. That'd be the top of the foundation, for instance, to help to break up some of the space. You can see where those materials kind of come into play here with the detailed wall section and where the roof and the wall meet in a very simple form. And that is really cedar shingles. And then where that hyphen space occurred is where the vertical wood siding happens. So this is another view from the water side, more like Susan Campbell Park, where you're really looking, you see the difference in the length of these two volumes of space and how they create that outdoor deck on the second level. And then one of I think the real successes of this design and the planning has been the Woonerf that's created on Dock Street here, which really came from the Planning Commission here, who challenged us to really take this and make it a more pedestrian space, and then we've done so. And I think it works really well. So that's the brick paved area you see there in the front, which leads right to the water and allows the Maritime Welcome Center to have some prominence in an entry statement on the corner there. And I think it still contributes to the diversity of the street wall at Dock Street. And then at the ground level, when you look in a similar direction towards the water, the Maritime Welcome Center will be there and we think complement the view. And you can see some of the different wood siding that we're using and the use of wood beams, timber beams inside the structure that will be visible from the outside, and I think will be really wonderful. The building will be very environmentally sensitive. We will be seeking LEED certification for the structure. And those are some of the details that we've still got to hammer out. But we think all in all, this revised design is very successful and works well with the Burtis House, as you see in this image from Prince George Street. Kim?
Thank you, Bryce. So I'm here to talk specifically about what is going to happen with the Burtis House. Well, under a different undertaking, the building will be raised to be out of the floodplain. And from there, this undertaking will really work to reactivate it and make it universally accessible to everyone. I think that can we just go back to that view for 1 second? This view really is critical to understand that even though the ridge line, the two ridge lines of the addition are higher than the ridge line of Burtis, you will not be able to see the Maritime Welcome Center when you're standing in front of Burtis because the Naval Academy is directly behind you. This is as far back as you can go to look at Burtis from its facade, and you can only see the Welcome Center on the water side. And so I just wanted to point that out. The ridge lines are separated by about 3 feet, so it looks drastic in some renderings and not drastic in others, but I do think that this is an important view shed to take into consideration. Other things that we will be doing, as Bryce noted, there's a non-contributing 2-story addition currently at the rear of Burtis. This is what we will be removing, and this is where the new hyphen will be connected. This really kind of minimizes adverse effects to the resource. And as you can see, and as John Tower already established, there were a lot of rear additions on this building historically. It was a very cluttered site. It kind of always had a lot going on, much like the wider city dock always has in different variations. So we believe that this undertaking follows the Secretary of Interior standards. The new addition is attaching at a non-contributing addition, so it's not exacerbating the loss of historic fabric. The scale is appropriate for the historic context of this site, and it's reversible. We're not taking down a two-story addition that's contributing to the resource. We're taking down a non-contributing addition and using that for the connection to the hyphen. And as already stated, within the context of the site, it's always had a lot going on at the rear, different functions, different, establishments, businesses running around this house. So I can just take you around the elevations of what's physically happening at the Burtis House. The porch will be restored, as will the larger building. The side porch will be removed. That's a non-contributing building. And as I stated, the two-story rear addition that's non-contributing will also be removed. And then the connection will happen at the rear. It will be a transparent hyphen, which allows views, but also more importantly, allows the building to be universally accessible. And then contributing with that is that one window that was added in the mid-20th century will be converted to a door so that we have two means of egress out of the second story of the building in order to make it meet code. And it also revitalizes the building. It's putting a use back into a long vacant resource. So having the harbor master come in and use this building will ensure its longevity for another 140 years. So this is the view from behind the new seawall. And this is one of the views where I think the peak looks larger, and that's because you're 7 feet, or at this peak, 9 feet below the level of Burtis House to which it will be raised. But I think it's an important view because you still have two very clean elevations of the historic resource. Nothing is really blocking it. The addition is set back. It's clearly distinguished. It's contemporary, but it's compatible.
I think we're about 6.5 feet below the floor level of the raised Burtis at Prince George Street there. Yeah.
And this is from the water side. The second story door that is up there on the deck, that is the contemporary window that will be converted to a door, and that's the second means of egress from the second floor, which allows the building to meet code. But then the one-story addition on the side that's non-contributing will be removed, and a very active and integrated park will allow Burtis to come back to life.
Scott?
This is a plan of the Prince George Street Park. Burtis House is to the bottom of the page. What you see there is at the end of Prince George Street, there's bollards, then a large staircase that gets you up to that level. We've got a substantial buffer between the Naval Academy wall, a planted buffer, I should say, with a seat wall, and then a large raised platform. That sort of ghosted tree is in the center of a raised platform that's at seat wall height. So this gives a lot of seating out there for, say, you have school kids waiting to go into the Burtis House. This is a nice waiting area. You're raised above. I should also say on the left, there's ADA access and stroller access up the side to get you up without accessing the steps that goes along the side of the Burtis House. Going towards the Spot Creek. Yep. Yeah, just to say that there's staircase back down, and the upper end of that staircase is stadium seating, more for seating to sit and watch the activity out on Spot Creek. Also, if you're waiting, we see this area being pretty active for like kayak launching and things like that, and potentially electric ferry. So you'd be waiting here. So we've created a larger paved area for waiting. And also you can see at the Naval Academy wall there is the ADA access up to that level. So this is the view that you just saw, but you can see the substantial landscape buffer between Naval Academy wall, the seat wall, an opportunity. We're not suggesting an anchor in the center. It's just an opportunity for sculpture or perhaps even a medallion in the center in front of Burtis House, maybe some interpretive panels. The staircase there separated by planting and the ADA ramp on the side of Burtis. So now I'm going to move into the legacy. We, as a result of speaking to the historic, we can stop now. I think we're going to pause here because we've gone through a lot, and maybe this is a good time for questions before we get into the legacy. So we'll open it up.
So that is both the Welcome Center and the park. And again, after the break, we'll come back with all of the legacy material and then the City Dock Park itself. Thank you.
Yeah, are there any commissioners that have questions they wanted to ask about this section?
Hi, I have one question. There seems to be an ample amount of harbor master space in the Welcome Center harbor master's house, but then you also mentioned that the second floor of the Burtis house would contain harbor master space. Just curious about the redundancy.
Yeah, the second level of Burtis will really be the working harbor master office space, which will be for staff only. The harbor master lobby will be the reception area, and then there will be opportunities for other meeting room space that the city will have access to, that the harbor master may control and schedule. So it's additional, really, city space, yeah. But we've called it the Harbor Master Conference Suite.
Thanks.
Good.
And also thinking, bigger picture here, there's so many other opportunities that we think may come along that a number of stakeholders, I would say, had offered ideas about how this space could have great views and be usable space in the future, flexible space.
I also, I'm a boater and I cruise outside of Maryland, and it really is important to have a washer and dryer and, a place to shower. I noticed all that is in the basement. And just wondering, do you envision like 1 or 2 washers, 1 or 2 dryers? Or, because if you're a cruising person, you really want to come to a place so you can shower, stay a couple of days, spend money at the local.
We've been working with the harbor master. They gave us some requirements for the boater facilities, which include locker-style restrooms, showers, laundry facilities. I think they currently have asked for 3 washers and 3 dryers down there, and we're looking, as we fit it out, we'll try to maximize it. But we'll have at least 3 washers and dryers.
Perfect, thank you.
Go ahead, Alex.
So the space between the Welcome Center in the Burtis House and Latitude 38, so we've sort of seen some pieces of it. Can you just sort of describe the size, the width of that between Latitude 38 and, yeah, so it's at the top. And that's at the level of Prince George Street? That's the elevation? And I'm just curious how big that is, and do you envision that to be really provide circulation that people can easily walk through? Because that's, right now it's just used as parking and you can't really walk through there, and it just looks like a missing tooth. And I was really excited to see that, at least on one of the sort of 5,000 foot views, that it looked like you really had circulation that sort of let you into that part of Prince George Street, which is just sort of a tunnel down from.
Right. It will be pedestrian circulation and
Yeah, there-
emergency smaller vehicle access as well. Not fire trucks, but ambulance potentially. And do you know how many feet that is exactly?
It's about, we think 14 to 16.
Yeah, so it's a good,
Yeah.
good size. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not
It
like
is.
walking through an alley.
Right, and it's ADA compliant because it does slope from Prince George Street up to City Dock now.
Yeah, okay. And so you wouldn't imagine that somebody would park on that, or it's meant to be.
They can't, well, there's bollards. I mean, we're proposing that you can't, except for emergency vehicles.
Right, so where the end of the pavement is, that's.
Right.
Yeah, so that really would be more pedestrian space.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I think that really opens it up there.
Yeah.
And makes that end of Prince George Street accessible.
Right.
At the same time, where do delivery vehicles and products get in? I've had a lot of businesses down there ask me where they're going to get their stuff in, because part of our hopes and requirements were really making that other side, the pedestrian side in front of Latitude 38 accessible, which obviously takes a lot of the opportunity for the deliverers to bring their stuff in. So where Alex is talking about kind of back up Prince George Street, what about deliveries for trucks and turnaround of those trucks and that kind of thing? Have we looked at that much?
It's really going to be Prince George Street for those buildings along Dock Street, although there is the opportunity to have some access on Dock Street that can be done through controlled means. But primarily, we're hoping that, and we've convinced, I think, the boat show and others, that all those deliveries have to happen on the asphalt. That will remain at the very end of Dock Street by the active park there at the very top left of this image. Because we feel that the park needs to be a park and not a delivery truck zone. So that's the way that it is set up. And so Prince George Street, and we've got enough width that, small trucks can turn around. But that's the only access that we'll have there.
And all those buildings have rear access to, they don't have to come through the front door, so to speak. They can go in the back.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners have questions? Bill, go and then.
Oh, please.
Could you go to the first floor map, please?
Bill, be sure to talk into the mic.
Thank you.
I'm trying to understand the access into the area that has the Visit Annapolis. In that we have on the left-hand side, we have what's basically would be a grand stair coming up, which approaches a glass area. You go through the bar, I take it?
No. Well, so the entrance will be really on the two sides here. We're envisioning doors in this location. This has not been updated, but at the same time, I think this is going to be, because of the architecture, probably the prevalent entrance into the building because it's most visible. And so you come into this location, and this is really the collection space where you're pointed in the right direction for what you're looking for in the building. And then you have access through the rest of this space, into Burtis and into this boater's lounge. This will be outdoor space under the deck for this Waterman's Co-op space. Now you can come up the stair here, of course, and come around. And, there's still some input that's required from Visit Annapolis and others to finalize some of these pieces. But, if we can get approval on this configuration, then we can start getting into those details.
How do you see the Waterman's Co-op space being supported? You seem to have a vision, I think, that food will be brought in or drinks will be served and all, but there seems to be no support space for that, whether that's kitchen or freezers, refrigerators, any
Right.
support?
Good question. So you'll see this space here, which provides some storage, and there would be some limited heating of food that's available there. And we also have space in the lower level that can be contiguous. And I believe this is a dumbwaiter shown here. Is that, Chris? What are you envisioning there? So that would have access to the lower level.
So right there where it says boaters facilities?
Yeah, so you enter, you connect here actually, just off of this corridor space. But, you know, there is that option to have some additional space there. And we need some more programming for that area to really make it happen. I've really based this to a large extent on in Savannah, Georgia, on a small building that's right on the waterfront there. And it's really, it's a raw bar and a very small space, which unfortunately I don't have in the presentation anymore. We'd shown it previously. But it's so small, and it really achieves all the things you really want there. There's not real cooking there, but there is a raw bar opportunity. So it's a lot like, you know, a market raw bar type situation. And so we see it as really being seafood, and you know, possibly you can get a sandwich there, as the mayor mentioned. But
yeah, do you see this space as being?
But it's not. What it is not is a full kitchen restaurant. That's what it's not.
And if I could just add, Visit Annapolis is hoping also to have some retail activity there, just as you have, I'm thinking in San Francisco, when you take that walk toward the Golden Gate Bridge, right in the park, there's a historic building, and it has some nonprofits and, you know, a Visit San Francisco, and you go in and you can get some, you know, buy caps or some kind of retail.
So you see these spaces as having some nonprofit activity, not for profits.
Correct. I mean, yes, that's been our understanding. It would not be leased out for profit.
And we only have 2 restrooms on that level. All the restrooms are in the basement.
Correct.
So the boaters come in the entrance.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, boaters can enter here. There is, you know, this wall is one that's not easy to penetrate. So we're kind of bringing people in the side. Whoops, sorry. And you know, and through this area potentially. The elevator obviously can provide access, but you'll really be going to the lower level. And this lounge was really a place that was seen as a waiting space while you're washing your clothes, for instance, and you know, you're in that lower level. And being an indoor component, a small indoor component of this Waterman's Co-op space.
Yeah, I think. Okay. I think the one thing that bothers me actually is those restrooms that are indoor-outdoor. And basically, I just see someone going in, using it, locking the outside door, then no one from outside can get in, and they walk out the inside, or vice versa. And how it's sort of operationally an issue.
We do have to figure that out, and I think it's almost an option. It's either or if we can find a way to make it work well. But it has there was a lot of interest in having both, and I think operationally we have to figure out how that happens or make it one or the other.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about occupancy and the number of restrooms, but that's something for you to figure out, not for me.
Yeah, I think with the public restrooms that we have, that these really need to be accessed from the inside for people who are in the building, and therefore the outdoor access may not work here.
So everyone goes down to the boaters' restrooms who are visiting?
No, there are public toilets down there as well as the boaters' facility.
Excuse me for 1 minute. I don't mean to be rude to a fellow commissioner, but
I'm sorry.
I don't think
I know I'm getting picky. I'll leave it alone. Sorry.
Well,
Eileen, could you just explain what's the second part of your, I don't want to jump ahead and ask questions that are out of order.
Yes, the second part is the detail that's been developed with the Cultural Legacy Group in terms of where the displays will be, what kind of displays in the park. There's a lot more detail. The electrical equipment, their location, what that's going to look like on the park, the new fountain, which is pretty exciting, and the stage pergola.
Cool.
If nobody else would, I have my usual melange of questions. My thoughts and responses come along basically in two categories. First, is sort of the outside look of it and the basic structure of it, and then questions relating to sort of the inside and how the inside is designed and what it's designed for. So let's start off with the outside. First of all, you're having changed the two great big barn-like structures into a small one and a longer one, I think really, really helps what were the hesitations that a lot of people felt months ago. Making the one on the left so much smaller has been, really relieves the kind of intrusion into the public spaces. So I think that's a real success. And I think that as you said, the response to the need for public access and that big, long public deck is really important. Of course, as you configure the inside, handicapped access up through the elevator and onto that deck is important. But we'll get to that in a second. So I think that that's a real success at this point. If you could go to the slide that had those design inspirations with the siding and the barn-like structures and so forth. Yeah, well, go back, yeah. One of the things I noticed is that almost in every case, well, in the prominent cases, that all the siding is vertical. But in the renderings that you showed of the welcome centers you're proposing they're horizontal.
That's true. The bottom right there has some horizontal siding. Most of the siding in Annapolis that you see is horizontal siding. We've really thought about both, quite frankly. It's probably a design preference type of thing that the team is struggling with, I would say. But yeah, that's the design issue there.
Well, if I had a vote, I would vote for vertical, because it just accentuates the grace of the roof, I think, so much more, and gives it that whole kind of Atlantic coast feel all the way from Maine south. All the barns and old houses were really built with vertical siding, but.
And the house that was adjacent to Burtis had vertical siding, which is.
I'm sure right. So, anything goes, and we shouldn't feel constrained by what the Burtis house looks like, because they're two such come from different eras. But I do think that the pitched roofs and so forth, they complement each other. I mean, you can't make a new thing look old. It's a new thing. And, but anyway, we're not going to decide tonight what is beauty. But if I had a vote, I'd vote for vertical.
Why not?
If we could go to some sort of slide that shows the first floor, the outside, the deck that people will sort of be on. There was something in there. We'll get to something.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. What strikes me is that could become a very hot place, and that one might think on either side of that stairwell, one might think of shade trees of some sort. That could get to be extremely hot, okay? Just a thought, okay?
When you say outside the stairwell, so I can follow you talking about in the rear, there's one slide here. You talking about that area?
No, the other side.
You're talking about from Dock
That
Street.
plaza side.
Yeah, the stairs from the water.
The stairs going from Dock Street up to the first level.
Yeah. You see the stairs in the middle, basically in the middle of that.
Yeah, I think,
First
you know,
floor.
we've been, and it's interesting, we've gotten some feedback on this about allowing at least one corner of the building to express itself architecturally to be the entrance. And we found by putting some trees there that, you know, we were kind of concealing the building to some extent. We think we've got a lot of shade here. You know, we're also balancing that with views, because these trees will block views, especially in, when they're smaller, quite frankly. But,
Well,
Scott, anything else you would add to that?
I think that's the case. I mean, look, I love trees. I'm all about trees, but I think there's so much glass on that elevation that for 20 years, those trees are going to be blocking, you know, they would be totally in the view. And we do have a lot of shade just 20 feet away across Dock Street. We have quite a few trees. The trees line Dock Street all the way down.
Okay, and it may be that you find that tables with umbrellas work. I'm not so sure. I'm not. But what it leads me to is the question that the gentleman asked, which is, what's the entrance? Where's the public entrance to the building? Not the boaters' entrance, but the public entrance, the pedestrian entrance, so to speak. Is it on this side or
I think
this
it's
side?
there. I think that's it.
Well, I mean, my hunch is it should be on this side. This is what says, this is the doorway, come on in. And then the other side, it looks like it's secondary. It's only access to the deck and those chairs, Adirondacks or whatever they are that are there. This is the one that says it's open, it's glass. This is the one that says come on in. Okay, that's just
Yeah,
my
I mean,
sense.
I think this is where people are
Right.
going to be following this broad promenade. And
Yes.
Towards the
And-
water, towards the building. They're not necessarily coming from the water, obviously, other than
Right,
boaters.
that's a different issue for where the boaters come in. I'll get to that in a second. But for the mass of people who are going to be here and want to come down, walk all the way down to the water, this is what they're going to see. And I think that that's the way to get in. And I think, well, we'll get to the interior in a second, but that's the one that got me. I don't want to sound trivial, but glass and birds don't go well together.
You have the
And I have no idea what kinds of things and solutions have come up recently.
Do we have a slide? We have the answer.
We actually did bring a sample today of the glass, and it is a fritted glass that allows birds to see that it's not open air. And
great.
So this, it is on the slide here as well. The upper right.
Yeah, I saw something.
You see
Right.
some of the dots on that, which this is getting to be a big deal in all, especially waterfront communities.
Yeah.
To provide a type of surface that
Why don't you start
is
there and we'll
visible.
pass it around? Sounds great.
That really, that's enough to
Yeah,
get
this
birds
is-
to sense that it's.
This is
not
made by a
native.
bird company that makes glass for birds.
All right, we can pass that around. All right, we have to depend on you that it actually works.
Right.
You know what I mean? Otherwise, we'll have big decals. We'll have decals. Okay.
Does
So that's a
Audubon
good.
Society support that?
The what?
They do.
Audubon Society support that use?
Yeah, this glass is used a lot on skyscrapers that are fully glass to stop birds from flying directly into the glass.
All right. Lighting?
It's pretty cool.
Lighting's going to be really important here. We want the building to glow from the inside in the evening when we can with efficient LED lighting. There will also be some lighting, which quite frankly, we're just not there yet, that will illuminate certain architectural features on the exterior. It's a great opportunity.
It should glow but not be brightly lit.
Agreed. I mean, we have energy concerns about making it glow too much, of course, but it is with LED lighting fairly easy to do. Grays, different surfaces. Yeah. The way I like to think about lighting is you don't light up the air with these, bright lights. You really want to light surfaces. So you put light onto the surface so that it can be seen and you can see the texture of the building at night.
And not light the air. That's an interesting.
Not light the air. That creates glare. Even though we have to do a certain amount of that to get it on the ground plane.
Right.
But when it comes to architectural lighting, that's the approach we like to take.
Okay. Deliveries were raised as an issue in terms of Prince George Street and the pedestrian plaza, how hard we've worked to make the plaza really to be so protected. Anyway.
Is that the best picture?
I don't know that this is the time to think about it or to decide on it, but as we have to think about the future, ultimately that Dock Street parking lot is going to be turned into a park. Ultimately. We're going to lose those parking spaces. It's going to be, at worst, a bus turnaround, but it's going to be a park. And so we need to, as you begin to configure Prince George Street, it's going to take more and more pressure for deliveries because ultimately that Dock Street parking lot is going to go. I mean, I may not be alive, but it's going. Or they may kill me. Anyway. All right. If we could move to the center, to the inside of the building, and then take a look at first floor. Once again, the entrance is important. Secondly, I think the question about restrooms was, I can't remember who raised it, but the question about restrooms I thought was really important. You're going to have a lot of people who need to use toilets. They've walked a long way, they've sipped their lemonade, they're going to need to go potty. And dealing with those public restrooms is really important. And sending people downstairs to the larger toilets which are generally connected with the boaters is probably not the solution. So I don't know what to say here.
Right. Well, I think what I would say is that rotating the buildings in this way probably did not help us in this particular regard. However, when you enter the building at this corner, I think we agree that the public will be entering here. They can go immediately down this stair to the public restrooms downstairs. And that is, that's the most direct way to get to those toilets. Now, there will be ADA access here with the elevator. But that is the way that we see that happening. So when you go to the lower level, you see this stair that empties out right here, and you're right at the toilets. So that's how the public toilets would work.
So then why have any toilets on the first floor?
Convenience, really.
All right, I'm going to let other people pipe up as to whether they're going to walk down those stairs in order to get to the toilets.
Well, I'm imagining the folks at the fountain with small children trying to access that bathroom down the stairs, and with wet children and diapers and trying to deal with all that. So I just don't have a good solution for you, but that's a challenge to address.
Right. Public, very important. Okay. First floor, back to the first floor. That's That, I think, it's a real issue. It occurs to me that, well, separating walkers from boaters and separating out those things, because what I see on the first floor is a boaters lounge which is available to everybody. And I don't know if that's really the conception that you want to purvey here. If there's really two functions, there's a pedestrian function and a boater function, and it may be that boater lounge wants to go up top, connected to the harbor master facilities and where they're going to check in and rent their buoy. Okay, I mean, I can just see everybody walking along who says, "Oh, there's this lounge. I'll go in there." And then the boaters feel like I've paid all this money for my buoy, and it's supposed to be for boaters, but I got all these other people here. So perhaps reconceiving that space might make some sense. Maybe. Okay. I thought the comment about the utilities connected with this outdoor, some sort of whatever it might be, dining or, raw bar kind of a thing, I think that's a very good, important observation. I once ran a coffee shop in downtown Baltimore, and it started with, like a sink. That's all we had. We didn't even have a little dishwasher. And as we got better at what we were doing, we were so constrained by the fact that we didn't have anything. We didn't have any refrigeration. We didn't have anything. And it really almost, killed the business in some ways. So that's a very trenchant comment about where are they going to have their utilities. And maybe a dumbwaiter is good enough, maybe not. Okay, but it's really important. And I gather that the interior configurations of this building are not at all set in stone.
No, they're not. And we're just beginning with the interior designer to start incorporating feedback. And so, we've got architecturally now what we think is working, and we've got to be more informed with programming of the interior space.
Good. Second floor. Okay. Wait a minute. Conference suite, crow's nest, which could be a conference suite. Wait a minute. That's a lot.
Well, the crow's nest is exterior, of course, but the crow's nest is exterior space.
Oh, it is.
On top of the deck. Yeah, it's really the deck.
Okay. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, but this is something that there's been a lot of interest with the city and the mayor of having proper meeting room space that you do not have now. I've learned in the last 4 years, this is like the only room that's available for meetings with the city that I've been able to find. And I think there are some opportunities for the city to have some proper meeting room space there. And it could be used for a lot of other purposes as well. And it's not a final layout, I think, especially in terms of how some of the walls work, et cetera. But there is a convenience toilet up here as well, which I think is obviously important. And we're going to be getting some more feedback from the harbor master as well now that this plan is gelled further.
And if I could add, we certainly have heard from environmental groups and other groups that deal directly with the Bay about their desire to have education, whether it's outside. So the demands, the problem will not be the usage. The problem will be really weaving that, threading that needle in terms of all the demands.
Okay, so I imagine it to be very flexibly used. It's got to be designed to be incredibly flexibly used. Do you have any storage space up there for chairs, tables, and the like?
In this particular version of the plan, there's not.
It's not yet.
It's not there.
Okay, just a thought.
Yeah.
Because that's, if you're going to having all kinds of people using it, they're going to.
Agreed.
And now that I know the crow's nest is outside, that sort of changes things. So your main access to the crow's nest or to the deck is over to the right. That stairwell to the right.
That's correct. In the elevator.
Or the elevator.
Yeah.
Can you show me the vision from the outside?
Okay. Sure. So the Prince George Street Park, and I'm going to leave it to the Historic Preservation Commission to talk about the Burtis House, because I wouldn't know where to begin. Well, what I'm seeing here is that those are two structures that are, they're married together. They don't, the one's not overbearing to me from this view. I know that architects like to use the word respect, you know, that one structure respects another structure, but in this case, those triangles kind of mimic, and I don't see it as hulking.
Well, that is the goal, and the goal is to have some diversity here as well. And, you know, I've been really blessed to be able to have a great team of collaborators, both inside the design team here and also our City Dock Action Committee design subcommittee. So Michael Dowling has been very helpful. He felt very strongly about these two forms being back and forth from one another and creating some of that diversity and that play within those volumes. But, you know, Leah Wilson, Chris Shine, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback as recently as the last 3 weeks on this particular revision. And so, yeah, no, we agree with you, and I'm sure we look forward to HPC comments as well.
I mean, others may disagree with me, but I see that deck that joins the two buildings is the thing that really, that somehow is really vital.
Yeah, it is.
Just that doorway that's there that opens to the same deck that obviously wraps around the new building. So anyway, I personally think that it works in that respect. Okay. I don't have any more comments at this point. I guess Prince George Street Park, we should take a look at that. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
I had a couple questions on the park. If you go to the slide that has the letters describing, you know, what they are, what the different components are, the red line there says approximate water line location. Can you extrapolate on that?
Yeah, there's a water line that goes over to Eastport.
Underground.
Underground.
Okay.
Sewer line.
It's about,
because I always thought that was going to be your
16-inch
it's water.
Wow, okay, I'm sorry. I was afraid that somebody thought it was where the tide was coming up in the park.
Okay, so that's
it's
a buried
underground.
utility line.
It's a
major utility line.
buried.
Okay, thank you. And then on previous slides for the resiliency project, it's been very clear what the or how the resiliency project will get to that 8 feet mark to protect the area, and I didn't see that on tonight's presentation of what exactly each component of that will be in the different spots. So is that available?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, we haven't focused on that really now because obviously we're going vertical.
But we definitely have taken it into account. If you look at the top of the ramp, of the handicap ramp at the Naval Academy wall, that's what we're actually meeting with the Naval Academy to discuss how that is that wall that ties into their wall. Then we'll have, you know, the idea is we'll have the walls that you drop in wherever there's an opening, like at the top of the ramp.
Okay.
And then the rest of the walls do meet, like if you go along the building, the foundation, that's why we've got those stairs going up to that deck. Those are high, and those are at that elevation 8.
So where does it get to elevation 8? Because I saw on the
So you
chart
see the
with,
stair,
like E and F?
Is it C? Yeah. No, letter C, down on the lower right.
In front of the hyphen.
Yeah, right there. So that stair would have to be blocked off, but those walls, the cheek walls, all along there are all at elevation 8. and then it turns in and goes,
Kayaks, lower, and then goes across.
yep, that's it.
Where the stairs are.
Grandstand or stairs.
Yes,
Are the wall.
right.
So like E and F, right above your cursor there, that the top of those steps gets you to elevation 8.
That's right.
Okay. And then it goes, declines from there. Because I saw earlier where the sculpture feature marked A, there was another chart that showed that at 6.5 feet. So that sculpture feature plaza will be below the 8 feet line.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Could you show the elevation again at that side on Prince George?
Oh, yeah.
This one?
The one that had elevations marked on it.
Yeah, so see the seat wall. If you follow that along, that seat wall at Spa Creek, that's at 8.
Behind the tree.
Where you have the stair opening is not. We have to we have to have a wall that pops or we drop in.
And that's consistent with the other locations along Ego Alley that would have similar
exactly
pop
drop
in the stairwell areas.
Exactly.
Okay. And then another question I had on that section is there are currently a few benches there. And I personally know the families that have donated those benches. So I was curious on their behalf if there was a plan to reincorporate those or what the plan was for those.
We need to look into that.
Thank you.
We need to look into that.
Alex, yeah.
With respect to the lower level on the Maritime Welcome Center, the floor of that lower level is roughly at the median water level height under nominal conditions. So it's not actually, the lower level is not actually under the, say, mean MLLW of the harbor.
The first floor?
Where are those? The basement, basically.
The basement is low. The basement is lower than, the first floor is at elevation 7. And then the lower floor is going to be at elevation, right, -4, -5.
Right, but it's not under nominal conditions between low and high tide. It's, the floor is not below that water level. It is.
It is, but it'll be constructed.
So given that, what do you have to do to make that basement so you don't get water intrusion? I mean, does it take a lot of heroic measures to make a basement that's not going to leak?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a thick concrete foundation wall with a thick waterproofing membrane on the outside of it that wraps around the footing as well and underneath. So it's basically waterproofing membrane.
But it's also the flood mitigation, like the solution that's going to really prevent that from happening, or at least we hope that's going to prevent that from happening, generally
yes.
speaking.
The whole building is behind the flood barrier. Right. So once we build that barrier to elevation 8, hopefully there's not going to be the tidal flooding anymore.
But this is really just a naive question. I mean, there's lots of precedent for having, basically like an inverse swimming pool. It doesn't bother. I'm looking at Burr over there. That doesn't keep you up at night?
No.
Okay.
You should go back to the Netherlands. The hot country's over there.
No, understood. I want to know if it keeps Burr up at night. Okay.
There are a lot of great examples in Baltimore and a lot of places where you're 20 and 30 feet below the water line with parking garages that go under. And I've watched them being built. It's interesting, and they do it in a variety of different ways. But we're confident that we can get that done with the right consultant on our team who will help.
Okay, thanks.
So along with that, at one point the actual wall, the Welcome Center, was the seawall. So is that no longer the case?
No, it is the seawall, the foundation wall of the Maritime Welcome Center on the water side of the building forms the seawall, if you will, at 8 feet, the top of which would be 8 feet above sea level.
So what we're seeing here is from the water to the left is a gradual incline?
Well, do you see here you can see the wall.
There's a wall,
Right.
right there. That's
Yeah.
the foundation, and that's a wall.
That's correct.
Okay, but keep going to the left.
And the boater facilities are directly below the seating for that
Yeah.
Waterman's Co-op. And so if there was flooding, a flood event to say elevation 7, the water would be up against that wall, that concrete wall. And will there be a membrane above ground or only below ground with that waterproof membrane?
Oh, I see.
We think, I don't think there will be a membrane necessarily on that. You know, it would work well through many flood events without the membrane. That could change if it starts happening, every 5 years or something. I have a feeling we'd want to stain it and apply some exterior additional waterproofing, just to make it look the way we want it to look and perform.
Yeah, we showed the concrete tile in the materials board. So what I was picturing is that the membrane would come up and kind of be behind that tile on the concrete wall, so that you've got a finished material, but you still have the waterproofing just in that one condition over to this corner until the deployable barriers continue over to where it says Chesapeake Bay there. So, right.
Oh, so you're talking about another pop-up barrier between the Chesapeake Bay sign and the foundation wall?
Right, because the top of the Chesapeake Bay sign is at elevation 8. The ground that you're seeing here is at elevation 3.5 or 4, where that boardwalk is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's about a 4-foot difference that we have to make up there.
Does that slope up as you go that way?
It does.
So
It does.
the thought I had in just looking at that, especially if there's that it runs right into the dock there, you worry about like a runaway stroller. I mean, no, seriously. I mean,
It's a valid concern. It has happened once in Baltimore. There was a situation like that because it was a steeper incline than this. But it's something that, we do have to look at. We may want to extend that planter a little further and think about that. But I think the slope of this is relatively gentle.
Yes.
But it's something that, can happen. I mean, the water's edge is unprotected everywhere.
yeah,
Really.
but generally not sloping down towards it. If it's level, it's one thing, but
True, and
a long slope like that.
it will level out before the water, but
In
It's like
Baltimore, by the World Trade Center, there's a 5% unprotected slope.
If I were a knucklehead middle schooler, I'd build a ramp right there and ride my bike off it. But anyway, you get the picture.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions?
I don't know how the process goes in terms of approving all this. I know this is an information session. It's the first I've seen this. I just wanted to say it's really cool. I think it fits perfectly in what that space should look like. I think it solves a lot of problems. You've moved the Harbor Master building. They have more space available, flexible space that the city could also use, that the people can use. And that visit Annapolis, it gives people a place that can actually see the water. It opens up the rest to a park obviously it's going to benefit people rather than parked cars having the best views on the East Coast. It'll go to people. I think that's awesome. I think the intention of what you're doing, you've hit all the marks. I think I think it's a testament to the fact that you've done that the first questions were about things that had nothing to do with the 30,000 foot view, that we came down to like, are the bathrooms going to be okay?
Yeah.
Is there going to be an oyster bar? Like things like that probably means that you hit the mark. So just for me, I've been around a long time. I think if something like that were down there, and the way that you tied it into the Burtis House architecturally, I think it hits the mark for me. Just wanted to commend you for that. I think it's great.
Okay. I'm going to do my best with...
We got a few more questions, I think, from our commissioners.
Sorry.
I don't think we're...
Go.
All right, Will?
Not so much a question as an endorsement for what the member of the Planning Commission just said. I think you've taken a lot of good pointers from the public comment and input that you've gotten so far. And I really like the solution that you've come up with the form and the positioning of the visitor center. And I would agree with the gentleman from the Planning Commission that a lot of the questions have really been questions that are technical, engineering, public works kind of questions, not the questions at least that the Historic Preservation Commission has responsibility for. So good on you, and I hope the next portion of tonight's presentation is as well done.
Me too. But thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Brendan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'll be quickly. I'll go quickly. Can you show the floor plan for the basement? It does seem like a lot of us have gotten hung up on this. It seems like they're just because you haven't roughed in what the boater facilities are going to be. And so it's been difficult. I think there's been some confusion here tonight over whether those bathrooms are for boaters or for the public. And I just think that would be, you could visually clear that up in the future just by roughing that in as quickly as possible. Can we go to the the first floor? So I agree with the confusion, sort of arriving with the family. Are you supposed to drag your kids downstairs or not? But you've got those two bathrooms and on the first floor, and they're relatively large, and lots of malls have family restrooms. And having had 4 kids under 4 at one time, like that's a godsend. And so that would make a huge difference in a lot of families' lives. And it seems like they're perfectly situated for exactly that. The Boaters Lounge, I don't understand the use case for the Boaters Lounge. Sort of the whole point of having a boat is that the boat is the lounge. When you arrive at a harbor, you want to do 2 things, 3 things. You want to do your laundry, you want to use the shower, and you want to talk to the harbor master, and then you want to get back to your boat or walk around the town. So I don't, particularly since if you go to the 3rd floor or the 2nd floor, you've got a harbor master lobby, which seems to fulfill a lot of the same functions that you might want in a boater's lounge. So I think if you go back down, that I really don't see the use case for that, which means that's freed up for other stuff. Which goes to the last point, which is that there are precedents here in Annapolis as well for a standalone oyster bar. The Chart House used to have one sitting out on its very own. McGarvey's still has one unconnected to the kitchen. The real problem is, and it seems like you should talk to somebody who runs an oyster bar soon, because one thing we had to do at the Chart House was drag big sacks of oysters through the restaurant to that bar. Right. So it'd be good to see where the walk-in freezer is going to be. And then, what I love about that, and maybe you could in future, maybe you could nod at this in some of the elevations in the future. That is where oyster shucking was done. I think it might actually be literally overlaid on the old McCormick's.
Good idea.
You're sort of pointing, I see the use case of it, but from a legacy perspective, that's directly tied into an economic activity right there. You have a chance to sort of directly nod at it with signs or with a name or with something. I like the fact that it's called a Waterman's Co-op. Similarly, I think the last time we were talking about the park about a month ago, I asked about sort of talking to Williamson Plath or some of the other maritime sort of manufacturing companies that have been here or still are here. You've got the anchor there. I know that's just roughed in, but Williamson Plath has been making beautiful things in brass for nautical environment for many years, and that would be sort of a really good place to start to see what you can do in that park.
Well, your comments are so helpful to what will be the next portion after the break of tying the cultural legacy into the, when I say historic preservation, the historic locations of buildings and structures, and tying that history together. This would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. The comment I wanted to add was I appreciate the referencing of the Secretary of Interior standards, and I would encourage you to reference the specific design guidelines for Annapolis. Our design guidelines are, I don't want to use the incorrect word, but I'm going to say supersede the Secretary of Interior standards, but they are more specific than the Secretary of Interior standards. And along with that, so speaking of the design, I appreciate the hyphen, the glass hyphen between the Burtis House and the Welcome Center. makes it very clear and delineates where the separation between the old and the new is. I think that was a good choice, and I support that. The massing by breaking up the building was a good choice as well. I am concerned about the subordination with the peaking of the Maritime Welcome Center. That word subordination is, I'm conflicted on that because it's how we're going to review the Maritime Welcome Center when it's taller and steeper, which will draw attention. And I appreciate the views from the front of Berta's house, but most people aren't going to be viewing it from that side. So that is something to consider in your application. And yeah, so those were some of the comments I wanted to add for that, specifically the historic preservation side. But the materials are reasonable. And along with that, our design guidelines are very specific about the area from which to draw inspiration, being half a block. So pictures from Maine or inspiration from Maine doesn't really apply to the historic preservation guidelines. We're very specific about where those inspiration and area photos need to come from. So if you can add that to your presentation when you have an application, I would appreciate that.
Okay, yeah, understood. And we have that context photos as well that we'll draw upon for the future application.
Great. And then along those lines, we do have outdoor furniture guidelines that will need to be very specific. The Adirondack chairs that were added out there recently don't comply with those guidelines. They are rather flimsy and plasticky. So looking forward to the final design having the furniture that complies with that, with our guidelines.
Great, understood.
Read these questions. The written questions. Yeah, take them. I'm going to try to go from the general to the specific on the written questions. How does the reduction in square footage compare to the original concept plan? And how does that impact the center's funding? Two questions.
So I'll take the last first. In terms of the center's funding, we are not getting federal or state grants for this. This is something that comes out of specific funds for the purpose of the city dock. And then I will let Bryce answer the first part.
The building is 540 square feet less than the previous design on the two above ground floors.
Okay. So what were those, the original square footage was what, and what is it now?
I guess you have it there. But we are at
5111 to 4570.
5411, right? To
5111.
5111.
To 4570.
4570. So.
Okay. So, and it's 500 out of that 540 square foot
differential, right?
Okay. And the funding question is, it is not coming out of the grants for the resilience and the phase one of the meetings.
Yes, there is no relationship to the FEMA grants and the grants for the rest of the dock.
How far out does the Welcome Center project project past the current sidewalk? I don't know. Does it project out past whatever current sidewalk exists?
Oops, if you can go back to the one.
Which one? This one?
existing sidewalk, but it projects beyond the existing sidewalk. I don't know if it's 6 feet or 8 feet, but it's
6 to 8 feet.
And we'll have to get a specific number.
Mr. Chairman, could we get you to lean into more? Thank you.
Sorry, mic was off, but yeah, it will be somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 to possibly 10 feet beyond the sidewalk. It does project beyond the existing sidewalk.
There was a question about kitchen support services for the Waterman's, what's titled the Waterman's Co-op, but I think we've answered that question. The others are a little more general now. Why can't the visitor center be based on genuine Annapolis City Dock area historic architecture instead of, quote, Eastern Shore style or based on the latest architectural styles? Why can't it be based on genuine Annapolis City Dock area historic architecture?
Because I think if genuine is suggesting traditional 19th century type detailing, for obvious reasons, that does not meet the historic guidelines of Annapolis nor the National Park Service, so nor my own sensibilities.
And I would add to that, a lot of what you see today, much of what you see today is a result of the comments we received from, well, I say there were 65 meetings, so a few hundred people. So there's been a lot of comment into the design that is before you.
Why must it be placed to block water views from those on shore?
I mean, I think we addressed that in the presentation with these exact, diagrams. Obviously, historically, the views were always blocked. And as we add this structure and take away the other one, we are opening up different view corridors and perhaps constricting others a little bit. But
okay. Third on the same card, why must it be so large?
Well, we have a lot of functions that we're trying to incorporate.
Okay. Okay. Why are we elevating Burtis out of the floodplain? And why are we building a new structure at the water's edge with a basement? First is, why are we elevating Burtis out of the floodplain?
Well, the reason that I've been told that it was determined to raise it above the floodplain had to do with a number of things. One, there is phasing, and at what point the idea was to protect it as soon as possible to get it up above what appeared to be safe levels. And, it's a little bit of belts and suspenders, I guess you could say, because there will be a flood wall, but it will also be 1 foot 3 inches higher than our flood wall. The other real reason is that it has a wood frame underneath of that finished floor that needs to be protected from water also.
Okay.
And if I could add, I think the commission and the HPC are aware the Burtis project is a separate project by Preservation Maryland, the elevation of it. Kim.
Point of clarification. Are you saying that they are mandating that the city does that and we have no choice as to whether we do it or not?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Did the HPC not review it? Okay.
Could you repeat the question? I want to make sure I understood it.
Okay. We've talked a lot about the Burtis House.
Yes.
I think I've made it personally clear that I'm not overly concerned with preserving the Burtis House, but I want to know for sure who is mandating the changes that are being made, such as the questioner just raised. Are we being instructed by the Maryland Historical Trust to do X, Y, and Z? Or does the city have latitude on making these decisions?
We're not actually doing it, so we're not being directed to do anything because we're not doing it. It is Preservation Maryland who is raising the building under a state grant.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
And they're doing it on a property that was conveyed to the city with an easement that Maryland Historic Trust still owns. And right, the raising specifically, but not the next step that we're looking at today.
Correct. There are multiple different things going on in the Burtis House that MHT will eventually review all of them, but they unfortunately are going to them by different design groups at different times. But I do think that raising the building, and again, I wasn't part of the project team with Preservation Maryland that got the easement approval through MHT, but in my professional opinion, they would probably want the building to stay in its current location but be raised as opposed to being moved further down Prince George's Street in a different location. A lot of the historic fabric of City Dock has been eroded, and this is one of the last buildings there from the 1880s. So I would think that they would say that raising it up in its current location would have less adverse effect than completely moving the building at all.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, just having it at its current elevation behind an 8-foot wall doesn't help either, nor would moving it. Yeah.
Second part of that question is, why are we building a new structure at the water's edge with a basement? And I do think that that's been answered. There's many uses that are projected out of this building: harbor master, laundry machines, restrooms, conference areas. I think there's a lot that's being asked out of this building, and that's why a new structure is being built at the water's edge with a basement.
If I could add also, Chairman, that the question you just asked us about why is the building so large, in addition to what you've just articulated, if you compare the footprints of what we are replacing, it is roughly within the same scale. So we are going down, but we are not building a significantly larger footprint.
It's actually smaller than the current harbor master building.
No, that's not true.
Tell me, what was that?
Chris?
Oh, tell me.
The comparisons of square footages that I gave was from the previous design of this building and how it got smaller, which is what we heard, and what we did. The needs at City Dock have deemed to include a lot more uses than we currently have. And with the new park there and the programming required for it, there's a lot that's required of this. And it's an opportunity, for once in a generation opportunity, really, quite frankly, to build at your water's edge in a meaningful way. And so that's why it's being done.
Question: why is there a need for a large conference space for city meetings at the water? I know I do think this was answered before, which is that, well, answer it, Ms. Fogarty. I'm not going to answer it.
It was answered, and anyone in any of who's come to any of our meetings, I think, has experienced the answer.
With the plan to build a new visitor center and to remodel Susan Campbell Park, will you be able to see anything by boat? What will you, in other words, what will be the view sort of from the water side?
Yeah, I think the renderings that we've shared show exactly what you see from the water, and it's, as we pointed out, it's important that this building address the water, and we feel it does so well. You will see the trellis, the bandstand, if you will, that we're building, and we'll be reviewing in the next half of this presentation. But you do get a nice view of this.
Of seeing the State House and the different, yeah.
Right, yes, when the park
we
was
didn't hear that.
approved. When the park was approved, previously, we showed a lot of views from the water towards the park and showed how well it's seen. And you can see it here in this image.
Okay, well, we're not there yet.
Excuse me, Mr. Waldman? Are there many more questions? You promised a break in...
One more.
Okay, works for me.
Why are we debating how to spend money on new amenities before we have actually stopped the flooding of the harbor and Compromise Street?
Ooh, that's good.
I would offer that the two are not related. We're simply going through a design and contracting process to take care of the pump stations over there on Compromise Street. So the work over here, as it relates to this welcome center, is not related to, or in any way slowing down that other project.
Any questions about that?
Yeah, I think we're ready for a break before the remainder of the presentation. So that clock up there says it's 9:21, and my phone agrees. So should we be back here at 9:30? All right, we'll take a recess for 9 minutes.
Really good.
just telling us what's all. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a rookie.
All right, welcome back from our recess, and we're ready for the second part of the presentation for this work session. So,
Well, thank you very much. I think we've given you enough introduction, so I'm going to turn this over to Scott Reichel.
So I'm going to be talking about the legacy, integrating the legacy committee's ideas into the project. And one of the comments that we got at the last meeting was, have you looked at the historic Sanborn maps? And so that's why we have this one up here. This is the 1897, I believe. 1897. And you can see these longer sheds were all oyster sheds. And we think that, and there were tenements in front of City Dock Street that were there. And we thought, we looked at trying to actually ghost these in the plan, and you'll see that didn't work well, but we think we have an idea of incorporating the plans as an element in the paving. So here is that plan ghosted over the plan. So you can see even the shape of City Dock has changed, but where the buildings are really doesn't work well with the design that we currently have. We'd have ghosts all throughout the lawn and changing over grades. So our thought is that if we do the plan, and you can see what's cool about it, there was a market building at Dinghy Dock. There was a sawmill between the two oyster houses where the active plaza is. Donner Park, I think, also had a sawmill. That large building there, I believe, was a sawmill. So it's pretty interesting, and I think it will help us tell the story. And that's where we had been grappling with, and thanks to coming before you guys, this is what, this is one of the things that inspired us. So we go to the next one. So here are all those elements, and we're thinking that everything that's ghosted in red are elements that we'll reference in this plan, and that's the location of them. If you go to the next one. So this is an idea that we have, is that we would actually do a City Dock plan in a material like granite, and you'd be able to walk over it, on it, look down. It would be, engraved, telling you what the different buildings were. And then what we'd like to do is reference those buildings throughout the park, like with a marker, not unlike what you saw, but a much smaller marker, like just a little bronze that might actually be numbered. Like, this is building number 1. This is the Colored Union's oyster packing house. Marker number 2 is, so this is actually the top left. That is actually where the Colored Union oyster packing house was. So we're thinking that literally in that paving pattern, we could say this is this was the location of an oyster packing house in 1897. The stair risers, we're thinking we can get verbiage and quotes. If where there are buildings nearby, we can actually engrave on those as well. And then this is just give you, so here is the plan as you last saw it, and we've now had to, you can see the 2 pergolas there. If we go to the next one. Yeah. And so Chris is going to talk about so we've had the need for electrical equipment that we've had to add to accommodate all the electrical equipment that's out there, and for future, for festivals, boat shows, and just the park itself.
Right, so we can't forget that this is also a working marina, and it, hosts the 2 biggest boat shows in the world every October, and a big singer-songwriter festival, a lot of things like that. There's a lot of electrical infrastructure that's out at the existing City Dock that we need to incorporate into this design. And you can see it here. This is just a slide that shows everything that's existing out there. Upper left, you see on the side of the existing Harbor Master building, just a hodgepodge of electrical stuff. The bottom left shows what we call the birdhouse and its associated transformers right behind it that are ground mounted on that concrete pad. And then the other three pictures show just a kind of a mess of electrical equipment that is over in between Burtis House and the water that really blocks a lot of your views when you're walking around back there. There's also a large electrical room within the Harbor Master building on the ground floor. So all of that is roughly about 680 square feet of electrical equipment. And we need to figure out how to kind of consolidate that all and locate it where it makes sense here. We had hoped originally, and if you go back another slide, yeah, here. We had hoped originally to locate all of this in one building that would have been in the Prince George Park area that Scott presented earlier, just on the north side of Burtis. That 16-inch water line that we showed you with that red dashed line really makes it impossible to do so, because that's going to need to be maintained and probably replaced at some point. You don't want to build millions of dollars of electrical infrastructure on top of it. So what we've decided is to locate all of this electrical equipment within two small buildings, one at the, nope, stay on that, please. Nope, go back. Yep, right there. One at the stage area in between Susan Campbell Park and City Dock Park. And you see that with the small yellow right there. And then the other equipment will be up in the active park, right where the existing Harbor Master building is currently located. So that building will house all of the single phase loads, which is really all of the existing slip pedestals at the existing marina. We have to have 6 different transformers that feed all of that electrical equipment, and those transformers will be located in underground vaults, one along Craig Street, just in the brick paver area to the all the way on the left of the screen, and then two other vaults would be up in the tree pit area, kind of in between the new Woonerf to the top of the screen and the fountain. So, yep, right there. So the single phase loads will come out of that building on the left, which is in the active park. We've also incorporated a trellis and shading element and some legacy markers into that Scott will show you. That building there where the cursor is at the stage will have all of your 3-phase loads, which are things like the new resiliency pumps, the Maritime Welcome Center, infrastructure for chargers for the new electrical ferries, some larger new pedestals that are going to be built that will help bring larger ships into the marina here. Okay, so now we can move forward, I think. One more. So the materials that we're considering are similar to what we've shown you for the Maritime Welcome Center: wood siding, wood beams for the trellis, some concrete tile, some painted metal, things like that, some glass, possibly on some of the roofs at the stage. Okay, next slide. And then Scott's going to kind of walk you through.
So this is the view of where Dock Street, latitude 38 is behind me, looking back at that first pergola. And we decided that, if we have to have this electrical building there, that it would be nice to incorporate the pergola. And one of the things we consistently heard was that you need more shade down here. And the truth is, when we get these trees, the shade is going to be a while before the trees provide the shade, because they're going to go in relatively smaller, and then we got to wait for them to grow. So we think this is a great idea. We've got vines that'll be growing up onto that pergola. We've got planters along that edge. The electrical equipment does have to be raised, so there's a plinth. It sits a little higher. And then you can see we've incorporated images of the legacy. So our idea is that we would take photographs, historic photographs from City Dock, and actually either have them etched on glass or metal panels and apply them to the side of this thing. So it becomes sort of they would be interpretive panels, and it becomes sort of an outdoor museum. And there you can see we would, we gather different photos and talk about what was there, talk about the industriousness. One of the things we consistently heard from the Legacy Committee is that was the industriousness of the city dock, that's what we should be celebrating. And so and as you saw in the 1897, a lot of it was oyster packing houses. That was, there were like 4 of them there. So I think we want to celebrate the watermen. We want to celebrate the watermen that lived there. We want to celebrate the watermen that lived on Pinckney Street. We want to recognize that there were tenements here, that people literally lived right in front of Latitude 38 and came over. So we're looking for all those types of photographs, and even different maps from different times, like maybe go back to colonial map, which are more of an aerial kind of map, but where you can't even see where Ego Alley is. You can barely perceive it. You see where the State House is and you see where Church Circle is, but you can't perceive the shoreline is so different. So we think all those things will be an interesting interpretive way to talk about City Dock. And so this is just another view. The promenade, so Ego Alley is to my back and I'm looking across. This is the active park. You can see we've got the table tennis there, and in the distance behind is the electrical equipment with the panels. And at the stage, just beyond the fountain, that building there to the left, that is the electrical cabinet there. And we've done a contemporary interpretation of a ship hall. So the shape of the pergola is actually a abstracted section of a ship hall. And the same, we've curved the sides of the electrical cabinet to match that. We've used that wood that Chris was talking about. And then, as you can see, the stage is raised here with accessibility, but we think it actually serves as a nice backdrop for performances there. And this is from Susan Campbell Park looking back. And again, we feel like we'll be putting panels on that as well. This is looking from the promenade back up to the Susan Campbell's to the left. And there you can see that abstracted ship hall, this section of a ship hall, and you can see the fountain. 90% of the time underneath this trellis is going to be tables and chairs, so it's a shaded element. We move them out for performances. And the nice thing about that is it performs both ways. So now I'm going to go into the fountain, which I should say that the city has contracted to Fluidity, they're an internationally acclaimed fountain designer out of Los Angeles. They came up with the concept of underwater for the fountain. So you'll see that we've seabed patterns, underwater grasses. So the paving in the paving pattern is not unlike what you'd see on the base, if you were snorkeling, and what you see for sand below, just like this. And if you go back and the grass is waving, so the water will be like the grass is waving with the thing, not unlike these arches. And the idea is apparently kids love to run through arches. That's like the thing. And so there are lots of them to mimic the grasses, and they'll ebb and flow. So they're going to go higher, lower, and they'll have movement. So it'll literally look like it's moving. So this is a view of the fountain and so these will go down to 12 inches and up to like 6 feet. So there's never a consistent fountain, but what's very cool about it is that this is going to look great as a splash, for kids to run through, but it's also going to look great when it's just on in the evening and kids aren't around. This is a good view of it.
we've shared with the HPC and the Planning Commission the events, including yesterday's rollout to council, tonight's very significant meeting. We did meet with Maryland Historic Trust today as well, and then our community meeting coming up the end of May. And again, we will be bringing the City Dock site plan elements, which Scott and Chris just shared with you. We'll be bringing that forward this summer.
All right, so I think we're ready for any questions or comments from our commissioners. So Will seems ready to go.
Okay. The fountain, if it's turned off and the water is not running, what is the elevation above ground level? Or is it flat with the surrounding service?
It's flat.
Okay.
It actually has their drains, actually the drains are part of the pattern within it. But then there's a drain completely around. There's a slot drain. You won't even perceive it. It'll just be a space that the water, any water that goes beyond the fountain will go there.
Okay. And the ship's hull pavilion, is that something that is removable, or is that a permanent structure?
No, it's permanent.
Okay. And the pergolas, is it your intention in presenting them as part of the design? You mentioned that the trees will eventually grow.
Right.
Are the pergolas something that could be removed if the shade was sufficient from the trees when they reached maturity?
I personally think, so we do a lot of these elements in projects all over, and they are consistently where people go when it's hot, blazing hot and sunny, or if it rains, they go under.
So the intention is that they be a permanent?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
How do you cover the fountain during boat show, and how do you protect it?
That you, if you remember back in the days of malls when they had fountains, and they would cover up the fountain with plywood. They'd build plywood platforms so they could do all the Christmas holidays. That's the same principle here. We'll be covering it. It'll be that can take weight. And they'll, yeah.
What happens when the first forklift driver drives over?
Before it's covered?
Yeah. Can it stand?
Well, so you step down to that entire area. It's not just the fountain, it's that entire, so there are stairs down at the edge, which we purposely did so that parents could sit along the stairs, they could sit along those benches. So the entire thing is raised up about, I think it's 12 inches higher. So we have to engineer that platform to be able to take a forklift. I don't think it's insurmountable. I've seen, they do lots of concerts. We've seen at stadiums and things like that where they build platforms like this that you can drive over.
So the two permanent pergola structures to me really seem as a way to anchor the two electrical buildings. Because without those permanent structures, you just have these sort of monoliths, the electrical building. And it really, I think it's clever to have those and then just sort of lay the pergolas off them so they just look like support structures.
Exactly.
But they would, so I'm correct in sort of looking at it that way, that they really are. They go together in that way, and visually, it just wouldn't look right without it. So you wouldn't want to take the pergola down.
Yeah, I think the pergola helps it. It's exactly what you said. It looks like it was meant to be.
And especially with the electrical stuff that stays where the old harbor masters, that's got to save some money too, I would imagine, because this stuff sort of leads there.
Yeah, locating the electrical infrastructure kind of in the two different locations makes it easier to get it to where it's going. So the wire runs are shorter. You end up saving quite a bit of money, especially compared to when we were thinking about putting it all in Prince George Park.
Right, right. Okay.
I have a quick question about the electrical. I don't know if it's because it's an artist rendering, but I don't see any of the pedestals along where the boats are, like adjacent to the slips where they belong.
Yeah, they're not in the model.
But they're there.
But they will exist,
Okay.
yes.
And then with the pergola, the main pergola, and you mentioned that it would provide shade, but it looks like the top is transparent?
We're contemplating, yes, like a translucent glass material so that it's not fully transparent, but it will allow a lot of light through.
Well,
But-
let the heat through, the sun through, maybe creating almost like a greenhouse effect down. And if there's no wind, it could get really hot under there.
If you frost that, if you put a frit on that glass like you saw, but a heavier one, you can really reduce the amount of heat gain below it. You could actually create a shade coefficient with it. Like they come in different shade coefficients based on the density of the frit.
I like a lot of what you do, but it doesn't remind me of a boat hull.
Well,
Yeah, I wasn't seeing that either.
well, it's abstracted. It's it's not. It's the shape of a section. So you see how it's.
Yeah, imagine it turned
Yeah,
up on
but
its.
that's not what you see from ground level. What you see is a flat roof.
So I had a comment on exactly that, which is that another industrial use of exactly that area or a little farther back was shipbuilding. We've seen it on the Sanborn maps, and it's on the historic Annapolis diorama that's right off the dock there. But it's a different kind of shipbuilding. If you're looking at a boat hull for that, what you're looking at, those are bulkheads on a steel ship, which is not what we made here. But there are other design inspirations that you could take from to get roughly the same effect. But what we built here was wooden, carvel planked, bay ships, bay schooners. So I love the idea, and it's possible that you could take another run at finding some actual Annapolis influence on the type of hull you're trying to suggest. Go ahead.
Well, we looked at most of the. Like clippers are so shallow that you can't really, you can't get a good pergola out of it.
Okay.
The depth, it would, if we literally did it, it would be too shallow. So that's why what I'm really saying is it's abstracted. It was a nod to the shipbuilding, but we are trying to get the depth deep enough so that you can get a band to play under there and be able to get enough space.
You could do a sail too.
That's what I was
A sail.
You know how sails oftentimes
Yeah.
are draped? Not real sails.
Oh, you literally mean like the fabric.
Oh, that also you could think of a way to shape that slightly differently to suggest a sail.
Yes.
In fact, that's what I assumed you were going for before you said hull.
Okay, it's a sail. You didn't see it?
You could, yeah.
Now that we know
I just want to say more broadly, thank you for being so responsive. We had asked to sort of think about what the historical outline of the industrial areas had been, and to nod at those things. And I think the solution that you've come up with is pretty elegant, and it allows for a lot of interpretation later on when we're putting up signs and things. Also, you obviously put some thought into responding to questions that we had, so we're grateful for that.
Well, thanks to you.
Are those planters around the fountain, are those removable or are they permanent?
They are permanent, but they get covered as well. They're part of that's part of the, we're working that out right now, trying to figure out how we're gonna, but they're in place.
Okay. And what were all those designs that you just flashed through there for the bottom of the fountain?
So
go back.
yeah, this is their inspiration of seagrass.
Right, but,
That's their inspiration for the bottom of the fountain.
uh-huh. Oh, what's that?
That's actually the paving pattern of the fountain. All the lines that you see, the straight lines, those are the jets arching over. So they're showing you where all the jets are coming out of, and the yellow dots, if you can see, there are all lights. The darkest squiggle, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Those are the drains. Those will actually be grates. But then the light blue, dark blue patterning of the base is just different colored stone that we would use.
Yeah, I think that looks nice. There was another image that had more irregular shaping. I thought that was kind of the image you were using for the more final product. So thank you for clarifying that that's...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's...
So I guess that was the one with, it looked more irregular to me than the other design. So do you think it'll be more like...
They're currently documenting this, so they're, it's no small feat to figure out each piece. These are, so if you can imagine, I think every 3 lines is a piece. So they were literally trying to work out every stone and every dimension. It wows me. I mean, but I'm a design geek, but they can figure it out. But I think it's going to be really pretty amazing, and look great in the winter when the fountain's off. It's going to look like a really cool plaza, which you can totally walk across it, and it doesn't matter, the jets recess. And
Yeah, I like the look of the fountain in general, and I'm happy with that aspect of the design. I did have a question, but I'll let Will say his while I remember mine.
Okay. Since we're tweaking things around, the ship's hull bothers me a little bit too, because you're taking a vertical section,
right,
and you've turned it 90 degrees, and I think that's what most people have trouble reading.
Right.
Maybe if you just angled it a little bit, one way or the other, it becomes more legible to the average person.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Would you want a keel line on that too?
Yeah, yes, that
It's
would actually.
slightly.
Did you hear my colleague's excellent suggestion? If you just put a little bit of sort of a keel shape, it would become even more legible and not really interfere with the design or the view.
Oh, yeah. You could actually, in a way, you could get an elevation of the boat.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It'll look like something we could recognize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look at that.
Yeah, the way that it, I like everything that you've done here very much. I think you've been very creative. But that is the kind of thing that I think people walk up to and go, what? And that's not the effect you want. I know that's not what you're trying for.
I would say that we don't expect that people will get it when they see it. That's not, we don't want it to literally go, oh, it looks like a boat.
I'm
I'm
not saying make it literal either.
Yeah.
Just, you can do it with the computer.
Yeah.
You don't like it, you don't like it.
Right.
You know?
You're right. It's true.
I was going to ask about the material of the floor of the fountain to have like the different colors. Is it still, are they going to be different stones or like a dyed concrete, or how are they?
We're looking at that to be granite, and there are amazing gradations in the granite. And the issue you have to look at with granite is when it's wet, it's a very different color. So we're having to look at, it's going from almost a light gray to a black.
Interesting.
To get that effect of to really get the feeling of motion.
Yeah, and then presumably...
And then when it gets wet, it's black to dark gray.
Okay. And presumably they.
And the finish, they're playing with that as well. I mean, they can't. There's a slip coefficient, obviously, because you got kids running in it. But
So that's what I was going to ask about. How do you make it not slippy? I'm sure there's a way. I just don't understand.
yeah, it's the way that it's like a thermal finish, and it's rated. It's rated with a slip coefficient.
Okay.
And whenever we're doing, floors in shopping centers or in lobbies of office buildings, we always are looking at, these guys know, they're looking at, you look at the slip coefficient of the stone based on, like, you use polished marble, you still have to look at how slippery is it going to get if it gets wet. So these guys are the experts.
Sure.
I have no experience with things, historical, interpretive things under my feet. I don't have much experience with getting the essence of what it is that trying to be portrayed there. I mean, I personally get more from photographs, pictures.
You mean in terms of the plan, the plan of the dock?
No, when you had those squares of this used to be an oyster house and this used to be something. I just don't get. I have no experience with how people get anything from that.
Well, we're not ghosting them at all. All we're doing is showing you the locations. What we'll do is, that is a plan of the city dock in stone. If you go back, that is a plan, and we had images of that. We can send you there. This has been done. We're not the first ones to think of this. There's lots of plans that they've done. Is that it's an element that you walk on. There's one in D.C. that's the entire. It's on Pennsylvania Avenue. I don't know if you know it, but it's probably a block long, and it's the entire map of
building, right?
Yeah. Right.
Freedom Square.
So this is obviously a lot smaller. We're looking at the size right now. This may be too big, but the idea is then those where we had the ghosted building, where we showed the footprints, they would be referenced on this plan by a name. Like on the plan, we will literally say this is the Martin's Oyster House. And then where it actually was, we'll put a little marker in the paving and says, this is the site of the Martin's Oyster House, 1897. This is the site of the Colored Union Oyster House of 1897. And this is the Miller Lumber Yard. So that's the idea. And we can also, so that one, in that key plan on the right, that V that you see, the red V, is looking up to a staircase, and that L-shaped ghosted, that's the building. It's not, they're not going to be anything in the ground paving, but we can on the stairs talk about that. Just above these stairs was the site of the Colored Union Oyster Packing House on the risers.
I think the notion of putting some form of permanent photograph etched, whatever you do on the sides of those
buildings,
the electrical things, I think that those could be quite effective. I mean, just the photographs that you showed of the jumble of sheds and packing houses and homes and boats and stuff in your earlier photographs, those are the kinds of things that people standing right there can get a feeling of what it was like, how crazy and active it was. I will read this question now. What design features are being considered for the new city dock for arts programs and art installations? And who's the liaison with city arts groups, and what's the best way to submit ideas and input?
So we have focused, the team has focused at this point on the cultural legacy and now bringing in the historic structures and what's been fascinating, again, is tying the two together. There will be art installations. There is, if you know how to do this, to put it to that corner. There is, that is going to be the port marker for the Middle Passage right there, but there is also the opportunity for art installation at that particular point, and the city has not yet initiated the process for that. Do you want to add anything, Scott?
I think we you saw in earlier views that we saw the opportunity at that point to do iconic piece of sculpture that you would see that was, I don't know, 25, 30 feet tall that you would see, and it might actually be kinetic and spin, and it would be, but that an artist would have to decide what it is, but we have it as a placeholder there as well as the marker at that point. So
I would suspect that as time goes on, we're going to figure out how to program this spaces.
Yeah.
Who's going to be, can people sell things? Can they show things? What kind of art fairs or markets are going to be allowed? It's going to grow over time, and it's making the spaces available for that experimentation that's going to be good. Has any space been specifically set aside for interpretive signage? You've sort of answered that question. There is. Are any spaces set aside for historical interpretation of Burtis House, City Dock, or Hells Point? And the answer to that is probably around the Burtis House, in and around it.
Yeah, again, the Burtis House isn't part of our, that's another project for another group, and they'll probably, I can't imagine they wouldn't have interpretive elements around it. We did talk about, in Prince George, that little park, there's an opportunity to do something out there as well. But I think we need to coordinate with them.
Yeah, I would say on that TBD.
Yeah.
Okay.
But since the arts issue has been raised, one of the biggest arts events in the city of Annapolis annually is Paint Annapolis, which begins in early June and is organized by the Maryland Federation of Arts. And I happen to know a few of the board members. We'd be very happy to coordinate with the city on how Paint Annapolis, which uses the city dock as the focus of a lot of the activities during the event, and I think could use a lot of these facilities that you're proposing.
And we've been in discussion with the Parks Department, and they ultimately, I think, will be the ones that program the, you'll go to them when you want to use the park for facilities and programming.
Absolutely, but yes, after we get through these approvals, there will be a whole integration with the arts from the Maryland Federation, but also from our own Arts Council.
Why are the two pergolas and electrical sheds so different in design? Why are they so different?
That's not the first time we've gotten that question, and we're in the middle of, we're looking at that.
Well, they're in very different places.
They're very different places. They're
serve different purposes.
Exactly. But we could probably do a better job of integrating them color-wise and material-wise. The sheds are exactly alike. I think we could do a better job at color and materials.
And material?
Yeah.
Because this pergola is metal.
Right.
And the other pergola is all wood.
Right.
Okay. That's the question. Where will the stormwater pump station be located?
That's actually in the parking lot right kind of where Craig and Dock Street meet, just to the left of that yellow building in the upper left corner there. It'll be within a underground vault. You want to talk?
And I suspect the person asking the question is interested in, are there any above ground structures associated with the pump station? The answer is no on the pumps themselves, but the controls will be in that upper left electrical building.
In that building with the
yellow rectangles.
Okay. Okay.
So we no longer really need an above ground pump station.
Okay, so the pump stations are below ground, but the controls are in that shed?
Correct.
Okay. While we're at this corner of the universe, I did ask Mr. Vogel this the other night, but as long as the architect is sitting next to you, like I said, that Dock Street parking lot, which is not actually on this slide, but it's to the left, that Dock Street parking lot is ultimately going to become used as a park. And so the infrastructure below it needs to be designed so that trees can be planted down the middle of it. Follow me? So that there may be a raised, because there may be a bus turnaround or something, we don't know. But you got to design the infrastructure below ground so that later you can put tree pits in.
I think it's going to be hard to have that fit in the budget, to be honest.
No, I mean, if we do this as a park, let's say 10 years from now.
Yes.
I think what Mr. Waldman is telling us, don't put water lines straight down, in a place where you might want trees in the future.
Just now, right. Do it now because it'll be done later. So that you don't have to tear it all up and move.
Water lines, duck banks, things of that nature.
Now is the time to do that underground.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to organize the below ground utilities in a way that we don't have to redo anything.
Yes.
Whether or not you could create the soil pits needed for those.
Not yet.
Right.
Not yet,
We'll
but
do
just
that later.
not putting ourselves into an expensive and challenging future design situation.
Right. No, great point.
We touched on this the other night, and maybe this isn't the forum for it, but now that we're talking about pump stations, so we have the flood mitigation, which is going to help the tidal crises, but that could pose other challenges to the storm drains and the storm runoff relative to the pump systems. Is that right? Is that what you were kind of touching on? Like we weren't asking you the right questions. Yes,
another evening. Yeah.
Another evening then.
Well, right. In the future, we do need to talk about stormwater, and
I guess I was thinking
what happens during very heavy storms, those kinds of things. So that's probability and statistics and all of that. Not for tonight.
Okay. But we're clear about Dock Street parking lot and infrastructure.
Yes, super helpful.
Yeah, okay. Does this Welcome Center design and so forth meet critical area buffers, and has the Critical Area Commission been consulted?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Oh, you asked the Welcome Center. What I was telling you was on the park. I jumped ahead. We will be consulting them.
But we believe so, yes.
Now, I think in terms of legacy, I think that there's a lot of stuff that's going to be added over time. Yeah. I don't know that now is the time to set it all up.
In fact, we talked about that, that we're talking with BCT right now, but the panels that they're designing the sides of the electrical cabinets. We're talking about how do we design them so that we can apply these later, and because we don't know that we'll have them all, and they may need to come later. So I think, and as long as we know that we can do it, it's additive. and maybe even, be able to change things out.
Just one last question, I think I asked this last time we met. I presume you've shown all the stuff to the boat show folks, and they
We have.
at least conceptually say we can work with it, or, whatever. There's no disconnects there
We've met several times, and
with all this latest stuff.
Public Works Directors met with them. They have not seen what you are seeing tonight, but they've had meetings, and we'll have another meeting with them very shortly.
Good. We'd like to make sure that all gets ironed out before we see an application, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that, but
I think the only thing they haven't seen is the electrical cabinets, which they'd be thrilled about because they're for them. I mean,
The trellis in the active park is the one thing that, but we've designed it so that we believe it'll fit within the tent that they've already kind of shown us that they want to
Okay.
use.
just want to make sure.
And they will need additional area than what we have now, right? So that we're going to have to expand the boat show in other ways to offset the square footage that they're losing.
So some other place around downtown, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Think, what happens, could we close Randall Street and do something like that, right? What can we do that still allows traffic circulation, but really we're trying to accommodate, they're losing 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And we need to make that up somehow.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions from commissioners? I had two more questions, specifically around the, can you call it a pergola if it has a roof? Maybe I don't know the definitions very well, but like the glass, is that something that we would consider feasible from the historic preservation, the glass ceiling of the pergola? Is that something you'd be comfortable with?
I am.
Okay.
Can't speak for my colleagues.
Sure. John, do you have an opinion on that aspect of it?
It's elemental. So why not?
Okay. All right. And then my last question, I think that a lot of viewers might want to know, and if they've hung out this long, give them a prize or something, but can you reiterate the timeline of how this project would ideally be built?
Our goal is to start this upcoming fall, build everything that you see here with the possible exception of the Welcome Center. Not necessarily Prince George Street either, but what we see on this picture, that main park between the 2024 Fall Boat Show and the 2025 Fall Boat Show. The most important thing is to make sure that there is electrical available to the boat show in October of 2025. Some of the park finishes may still be left to finish up over that winter. And then we'll move to Dock Street. At some point in time, we'll do the Welcome Center. Dock Street being primarily the pump station and some of those other modifications. And we'll pick up the Alex Haley Memorial area, Kunta Kinte, and whatever we're doing over at the Donner parking lot, maybe in a third phase. So probably about 3 years all told of construction here, but in small chunks.
And so you'll have ways to, so say you put these new electrical installations in before the major flood mitigation pieces. I mean, you can't do it all at once, obviously, but you have ways of protecting that new infrastructure you're doing before, or
it's why it's being elevated.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it'll be done in a way that you're not going to wash out something you just put in because you don't have the flood mitigation.
Correct.
piece.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would assume
these structures you'd see would be a little lower if they were being built later, right? If we could build all of the flood protection and then 4 or 5 years from now come in and do the electrical, it could all be a little bit, quite a bit shorter. But right now, because you can't put this kind of equipment below the floodplain elevation.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for my fellow commissioners for being here tonight, and we're excited for this project and appreciate your bringing it to us to hear our comments and what you've incorporated from our prior engagements. I appreciate that. So,
see you in a couple months.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, I think we
adjourned.
We can be adjourned.
We're
So
walking out.
Yeah. So thank you. That's the meeting for tonight. So.